Chapter 1003. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say, net wonderful pop-up window free reading. First grandma, go and find an imperial physician. Our princess has fainted. Yujia rushed in and looked flustered. What, your princess fainted? Zhao Shiran was stunned and said anxiously. Princess has been in poor health these days. Although she has been chanting scriptures, she suddenly fainted. First grandma, you'd better send someone to the palace to invite an imperial physician. Yujia was very anxious. Let's get a doctor outside first, Zhao Shiran said. No, we don't know if the doctors outside are good or bad. If they can't cure princess, we can't bear the responsibility. Yujia was so anxious that she wanted to cry. After such a thing happened, even though she was favored by Xiao Wanru, she couldn't bear it. But now, I can't invite an imperial physician, Zhao Shiran said hesitantly. Her status was not high enough, but in fact, the status of Madame Jiang and Madame Dowager was high enough. Someone, bring the imperial physician here. Infanta Yuanan, who had been looking for an opportunity to show her kindness, ordered an old maid beside her. The old maid left in a hurry. Let's go see Princess Chen first. Perhaps Princess Chen fainted because of Madame Jiang's matter. Princess Yuan, and stood up and glanced at Madame Jiang. Madame of Duke Xing's words just now were hard to conceal. It was obvious that she was guilty, flustered, and wanted to push all the blame on Xiao Wanru. It was possible that Xiao Wanru was angry because of what she had done in the praying hall just now. Go and help Princess Chen to rest for a while in the yard on the side, and wait for the imperial physician to come, Zhao Shiran said while letting several maids leave with Yujia. Xiao Wanru fainted. It was impossible for her to keep fainting in the praying hall, so she had to move to another place for the imperial physician to treat her. Qiu Yu took 2 steps forward and said, Infanta Yunlu, first Grandma Xiao, I won't disturb you from saving Princess Chen. I still have business to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. He had wanted to leave for a long time. Now that he had the chance, how could he be willing to stay here? This matter made him feel awkward. Lord Qiu is leaving just like that? Princess Yuan, and suddenly smiled and said with a meaningful look. Qiu Yu inexplicably panicked and asked with a puzzled look, Is there anything else, Princess Yuanin? I'm fine, but I'm afraid that Lord Qiu can't explain it to Prince Chen. When Prince Chen comes back, he may think that it was Lord Qiu who made Princess Chen faint out of anger. Infanta Yuan, and said with a faint smile. Prince Chen was not the kind of person who could listen to others' explanations. He had broken Chu Xinghong's hand at the gate of the palace just now, but he didn't explain at all. Now it was Qiu Yu's turn. Princess Yuan, and felt inexplicably happy about Qiu Yu's misfortune. Previously, it was her second brother who had been killed, so she was full of resentment. But now, she was in a good mood. It seemed that Qiu Yu would not be able to escape this time. Compared to Qiu Yu, his second brother didn't seem to have made any progress. But so what? Didn't Qiu Yu come in himself now? I'm just investigating the case. I didn't make Princess Chen angry, nor did I talk to her. But Madame of Marquis Xing? Qiu Yu's eyelids twitched and he looked at Madame of Marquis Xing meaningfully. In this case, how could he not remember Prince Chen's tyranny? Compared with him, it was much better for Madame of Marquis Xing to have an accident. Anyway, Madame of Jiang had been involved in so many things. Just now, she had tried to frame Princess Chen. Qiu Yu was also afraid at this time. Fortunately, he had made the right decision just now and did not frame Princess Chen with Madame of Jiang. Otherwise, he would not be able to escape. Infanta Yuan, let's talk about this later. When Prince Chen returns to the capital city, I will go to him to apologize. Now I have something to do in the Ministry of Justice, so I have to leave now. Qiu Yu bowed deeply to Infanta Yuan and said. His heart was beating fast, and he increasingly felt that it was not a good thing to stay here. He should leave quickly to avoid trouble. This time, Infanta Yuan, and did not stop him. She nodded with a smile and said, Goodbye, Lord Qiu. She said it politely. After so many things had happened, Qiu Yu could not get away even if he wanted to. Even if he left now, it would not matter. Infanta Yuan, let's go and have a look together. Zhao Shiran invited. She could tell that Infanta Yuan and was on Xiao Wanru's side today, and she would not leave so easily. Did Chu Yuanan want to make friends with Xiao Wanru? This was unexpected. Zhao Shiran frowned secretly. It was not easy to deal with Chu Yuanan. Okay, let's go and have a look together. Infanta Yuan nodded. Shiran, I will go with you. I also want to see Wanru. Madame of Jiang seemed to wake up suddenly. She grabbed Zhao Shiran's hand and stood up with difficulty. Mother, go back and have a rest first. You are not in good health, so you'd better take a rest at this time. Zhao Shiran comforted her. Now I must go. I can't let anything happen to Wanru here. Madame of Jiang said stubbornly. She reached out to hold Zhao Shiran's hand, as if she would not let Zhao Shiran go without her. She looked abnormal and overly excited. Mother, it's okay. Princess Chen will be fine. Don't worry. She will be fine. Zhao Shiran comforted her with a good temper. His voice was soft and gentle, with a sense of comfort. Will she really be fine? Madame of Jiang said doubtfully. Will Princess Chen really be fine? Of course not. Mother, don't worry. Zhao Shiran said with a smile. That's good, that's good. It's good that Princess Chen is fine. It's obvious that her maid is not a good person. She has to keep an eye on her maid in case she does something wrong to Princess Chen, Madame of Jiang murmured again. She seemed to be speaking to Zhao Shiran, but at the same time, she didn't seem to be speaking to Zhao Shiran. Infanta Yuan and several madams finally noticed something different. Seeing this, one madam couldn't help asking, First Grandma Xiao, is there something wrong with your mother-in-law? No matter how they looked at it, it was abnormal. They had all ridiculed Madame of Jiang in their hearts. In that situation, she even wanted to frame Princess Chen and pulled Qiuyu, as if she must let him see something. At the same time, they thought that she had gotten retribution for doing so many vicious things. At this time, she still refused to let go of the matter and talk to Princess Chen nicely. She was also stupid. Mother, since she went down the mountain, has been acting a little abnormal. Zhao Shiran lowered her head with tears in her eyes. Have you asked the doctor to see her? Another madam asked. Was it because she had been locked up for a long time that she became abnormal, or because there were too many things to talk about? The former glorious Madame of Duke Xing suddenly couldn't bear it and went crazy? Several madams who had this idea all looked at Madame of Duke Xing in astonishment. Madame of Jiang looked normal at the moment, but she was holding her daughter-in-law's sleeve tightly, which was not right. She was not a child but an elder. She was pulling her daughter-in-law like a child. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wandering. There was a little excitement in her eyes. When some madams met her eyes, they immediately looked away in fear. Madame of Jiang's eyes looked both excited and ruthless. Yes, but she didn't say anything. She just asked my mother to take a good rest. Zhao Shiran smiled and explained. Her words were vague. She didn't say yes or no, but the current situation of Madame of Jiang made people feel that it must be true. Let your mother-in-law go to have a rest. How can you let her out in such a state? Now Princess Chen is angry. A madam stood up and said, since she had a mental problem, how could she let her out? Fortunately, she had just made a scene in front of the praying hall and hadn't reached out to hit people. If she had really hit Princess Chen, Marquis Xing's mansion would have to bear the consequences. Previously, everyone had been secretly ridiculing Jiang Shi. Now that they saw her in such a state of confusion, they felt that it was not difficult to understand what had happened. She had all gone mad. No wonder she had done so many unseemly things before and had even spoken nonsense. Everyone was very tolerant of a person with mental problems. Come on, send Madame back to have a rest. Zhao Shiran said loudly after thanking several madams for their sympathy. Two servant girls came to ask Madame of Jiang to go back, but Madame of Jiang refused to let go of Zhao Shiran's hand. No matter how hard they pulled, they couldn't pull Zhao Shiran's hand away. The two servant girls couldn't really talk about Madame of Jiang in front of everyone, so they could only coax and persuade her, but it didn't work. Take her with you. Let Madame of Jiang rest outside. We will go to see Princess Chen. Infanta Yuan said impatiently. Looking at Madame of Jiang's situation, they couldn't pull her away. Okay. Zhao Shiran said helplessly. He reached out to take Madame of Jiang's hand and walked out. He was graceful and didn't dislike Madame of Jiang at all. He took good care of her and walked very slowly. In order to take care of Madame of Jiang, he deliberately stopped and comforted her in a low voice from time to time. Seeing Zhao Shiran like this, several madams following behind nodded secretly. The eldest legitimate daughter of Minister Zhao was really good and filial. They followed the servants of Marquis Xing's mansion to an empty yard beside the praying hall. As soon as they entered the door, they saw Yu Jie coming out with red eyes. Seeing Infanta Yuan and others, she hurried forward and said, "Greetings, Infanta Yuan and First Grandma. Our princess hasn't woken up yet. I want to go to the door to see if the Imperial physician has come." "Girl, why are you in such a hurry? The Imperial physician should be here soon. There are people waiting at the door. They won't be delayed. Hasn't your princess woken up yet?" Infanta Yuan asked. "She hasn't woken up yet. I can't help her." Yu Jie was so anxious that she was about to cry. After such a thing happened and there was no other master in Prince Chen's mansion, it was normal for her, a servant girl, to be afraid and flustered. "Go in and have a look. You also wait for your master inside. You can't leave at this time." Infanta Yuan then reprimanded her in a low voice. "Yes, I know. I'll go back to serve the princess right away." Yu Jie nodded obediently. After bowing to Infanta Yuan, she turned around and hurried back. Infanta Yuan nodded secretly and thought that Xiao Wanru was a sensible girl. Suddenly, she remembered that Xiao Wanru had stood in front of Xiao Wanru when she pushed Chu Yuanhong down and saved Xiao Wanru from the disaster. Now Xiao Wanru had to bow to Xiao Wanru because of Xiao Wanru. Her face immediately darkened. Chapter 1004. Princess What's? The Imperial physician put down his hand and frowned tightly. "What's wrong with Princess just now?" In the inner room, Infanta Yuan and Zhao Shiran accompanied her, and the others sat outside. It was very quiet both outside and inside. Although many madams lowered their heads, they pricked up their ears to listen to any sound inside. "There's nothing wrong with Princess, but..." Speaking of this, Yu Jie suddenly widened her eyes and seemed to think of something. She was almost stunned and panicked. "But what's wrong with her?" the Imperial physician hurriedly asked. He couldn't find anything unusual at the moment, but it was impossible for Princess Chen to faint for no reason. When Madame Jiang, Marquis Xing, made trouble, although our princess had been chanting scriptures, she seemed to be suppressing something. Later, Yu Jie stammered. Later, when Infanta Yuan and madams left, Princess suddenly stood up in a rage and then passed out. Princess was in a rage? Abnormal behavior? The Imperial physician immediately came to a conclusion. "Yes, our princess has always been gentle and never loses her temper. She usually speaks in a soft voice, but she seemed to be suppressing something just now." Later, she threw the wooden fish out, as if she couldn't control her bad temper. "What's wrong with our princess?" Yu Jie nodded repeatedly with panic in her eyes. She was really scared. Several madams sitting outside looked at each other and saw the panic in each other's eyes. This was the morning hall. Could it be that something had offended Princess Chen? Some quick-witted ones pointed at Madame Jiang, who looked a little numb sitting aside. Madame Jiang's behavior before also seemed to be different from before. Among them, there were several foreign who were familiar with Jiang Shi in the past. In their memories, Jiang Shi was definitely not like the one in front of them. Moreover, she would never order the servants to prepare tea and snacks in front of the hall during the ceremony. She had a very disrespectful appearance and later slandered Chen Wangfei. The current situation seemed to be more and more wrong. Could it be that both of them were possessed? Thinking of this, the madams couldn't help but shiver. Their eyes flickered. Such an evil thing made them afraid. The madams used to worship Buddha and Bodhisattva, so of course they believed in this kind of thing. The Imperial physician didn't believe it. His eyes flickered and he immediately thought of another plan. As an Imperial physician in the palace, he had seen many shady things. Who wouldn't think of this? When did Princess Chen become abnormal? The Imperial physician's face darkened as he asked. "When we first entered the mansion, our princess was fine, but later, when it came to the courtyard." Yujie answered while thinking. She tried hard to recall what had happened at that time. I thought our princess was fine when she knelt down and recited scriptures. Later, when I served Madame Jiang, I inadvertently saw something wrong with our princess. This servant wanted to go over at that time, but Madame Jiang was making a fuss, and this servant couldn't leave for a while. I could only appease Madame Jiang first. Later, Infanta Yuan and first grandma took Madame Jiang away. Then I had time to return to our princess. She looked very strange and tried to suppress it. Later, she couldn't control it. Madame Jiang was still making a fuss at that time? The imperial physician keenly grasped the key point, and his heart skipped a beat. As of course, the imperial physician didn't want to get involved in this kind of thing. But now that he had been involved, he had to work hard to solve the mystery. Otherwise, this matter might fall on him. Madame Jiang was very noisy today. She made a fuss that Princess Chen was disrespectful to her. Just now, she repeatedly framed Princess Chen. She even set up chairs at the door of the room where the religious ceremony was held, sat there to drink tea and eat snacks, and asked Princess Chen's servant girl to serve her. Infanta Yuan interrupted. How could she do such a thing? The imperial physician could hardly believe that there was such a thing. How stupid must she be to do such a thing? Of course, he did not expect that Madame of Duke Xing thought that she could definitely win Xiao Wanru's heart. Moreover, she purposely provoked Xiao Wanru, so she did such a thing. In the eyes of the imperial physician, these premeditated plans seemed to be crazy. So she was crazy? Princess Chen was fine before, and she was still fine when she came to the religious ceremony. Who did she approach? The imperial physician's eyes flickered. There are more people here for the religious ceremony, and more people are walking around. There are also many people arranged before, so it may not be easy to find. Zhao Shiran frowned and interrupted. First grandma, when our princess came in, the only outsider who approached her was Madame of Marquis Xing. After that, she sat beside our princess for a long time. Our princess was kneeling at that time, and Madame of Marquis Xing sat beside her. Then Madame of Marquis Xing moved the door to make a fuss. The rest of the servants did not approach our princess at this time. Yujie said. Both the madams sitting outside and the imperial physician inside widened their eyes in shock. Marquis Xing's mansion was really crazy, and Madame of Marquis Xing was also crazy. Princess Chen was kneeling, but Madame of Jiang was still sitting. Even if she was Princess Chen's elder, this behavior was almost a slap in the face of the royal family. Many madams looked at Madame Jiang. Madame Jiang's reaction was a little strange. She frowned and seemed to be a little slow. Was it because she had been locked up in the Yuhui nunnery to cultivate, or was it really abnormal? Where is Madame of Marquis Xing? Can I have a look at her? The imperial physician stood up and said, Madame of Marquis Xing is outside. Infanta Yuan said, There's nothing wrong with my mother. There's no need for the imperial physician to worry. Zhao Shiran refused with a smile. The two of them spoke almost at the same time. After they finished speaking, they looked at each other and smiled, as if they were still in the boudoir and had a good relationship with each other. Infanta Yuan then stood up first, reached out and flicked her sleeves. Imperial physician, come with me to see Madame of Marquis Xing. I also feel that there is something wrong with her. After saying that, she turned around and walked out, ignoring Zhao Shiran. The imperial physician also ignored her and followed Infanta Yuan out. Both of them used to be famous noble ladies in the capital city. Although Infanta Yuan's status was higher than Zhao Shiran's, it was not much higher. In terms of power, Ruiping Great Elder Princess's mansion was definitely higher than Shangshu's mansion. But now it was different. Even if Infanta Yuan was not married, she had already been destined to be Princess Zhou. In the future, she might even be second only to the emperor. Compared with her, Zhao Shiran was much weaker. How could the imperial physician care about a husband who was not even the heir of a duke? Zhao Shiran twisted the handkerchief in her hand fiercely, and a cold light flashed across her eyes. The contrast was so strong that she couldn't control her mood at once. Fortunately, she reacted quickly. When she twisted the handkerchief, she turned her head to look at Xiao Wanru on the bed. If anyone else would notice her abnormality, Xiao Wanru would be the only one. At the head of the bed, the gauze curtain fell, and Xiao Wanru couldn't see clearly inside. Yujie was putting Xiao Wanru's hand into the gauze curtain with her back to her. Her hand was soft and cotton, and it was obvious that Xiao Wanru was still in a coma. Zhao Shiran felt relieved and said, "Yujie, take good care of Princess Chen. I'll go outside to take care of her." "First Grandma, do as you please." Yujie turned around, bowed sideways respectfully, and stood in front of Xiao Wanru's bed with a nervous and panicked look. Xiao Wanru fainted, so she, as Xiao Wanru's personal maid, had a great responsibility. Zhao Shiran found nothing unusual, turned around and left. In the gauze curtain, Xiao Wanru watched Zhao Shiran walk out calmly and also saw a sachet hanging on Zhao Shiran's belt. The sachet smelled very light and was used to calm one's mind. If she hadn't suddenly got up just now and seemed to have overreacted, the light smell would almost not have spread out. Combined with her own fragrance, the fragrance of medicine in the room was so light that it could be ignored. If Xiao Wanru hadn't been sensitive to the smell of medicine, if she hadn't paid special attention to it, if Zhao Shiran hadn't been absent-minded because of infantiyuan, and just now, Xiao Wanru found a little bit of it. She raised the corners of her mouth silently and thought that it was exactly what she thought. "Madam Jiang, Madam, please stretch out your hand." The Imperial physician went outside and looked at Madam Jiang and said, "Imperial physician, I'm fine. You don't have to see her." Madam Jiang seemed to come to her senses at this time. She shook her head and withdrew her hand with a gloomy face. The Imperial physician stretched out his hand awkwardly, but did not withdraw it. He said, "Madam Jiang, you'd better have a look." "Madam Jiang, have a look. Maybe Princess Chen was plotted against." Infantiyuan said. This was a big accusation. If Madam Jiang didn't let the Imperial physician see her, there might be something wrong. Madam Jiang frowned. When she was about to speak, she was interrupted by Zhao Shiran's voice. He said, "Mother, just let the Imperial physician see you. It happens that you are also a little uncomfortable. I wanted to go to the Imperial Palace to ask the Imperial physician to see you. The doctors who gave you medicine before are definitely not as good as the Imperial physician in the Imperial Palace." Zhao Shiran also came out from inside, walked to Madame Jiang's side, and said softly. Madame Jiang looked at him with a frown and then slowly stretched out her hand. Zhao Shiran personally helped her put her hand on the medicine pillow and then spread a handkerchief on her wrist. The Imperial physician put his hand on her wrist and felt her pulse with a serious face. After a long while, he put his hand down and looked up at Madame Jiang's face. She looked very bad. Her face was thin and exposed, her cheekbones were high, and her eyes were gloomy. "What medicine is Madame Jiang taking?" Zhao Shiran frowned and asked the Imperial physician in a low voice. "Mother has been sick since she was in Jingxin Monastery. It's good that she came back this time, so I invited a few doctors to take a look and gave her some medicine. Did they use the wrong medicine?" The Imperial physician's eyes fell on Madame Jiang. He raised his nose and a faint smell entered his nose. The Buddhist incense on Madame Jiang's body was very strong, and the smell of medicine was also very strong. If the Imperial physician had not been careful, he would not have smelled that strange smell. He looked at Madame Jiang and examined her. Finally, his eyes fell on the handkerchief in her hand. "Madame Jiang, can I have a look at your handkerchief?" Chapter 1005. Imperial physician, my mother is a woman, and you are a man. I'm afraid it's inappropriate for you to take my mother's handkerchief without permission. Zhao Shiran frowned and said with a dark face. How could a man look at a woman's handkerchief? Why do you want to look at my handkerchief? Madame Jiang asked with a cold face, ignoring Zhao Shiran's words. Madam, there seems to be something on your handkerchief, the Imperial physician said implicitly. What can be on my handkerchief? Is it harmful? Madame Jiang asked, holding the handkerchief tightly and not letting go. I can't say whether it is harmful or not. I have to ask you to take it over and have a look. If there is a difference between men and women, I just want to have a look. Madam, you can ask a servant girl to bring it over. The Imperial physician said politely. Although Marquis Xing's mansion was declining day by day, it was not a place where he, an imperial physician, could interfere. Mother! Zhao Shiran wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. The Madame Zhang's gaze shifted to Zhao Shiran's face, her eyes gloomy. Compared to before, her eyes were much more quick-witted, but they also revealed a dark and sinister light. Zhao Shiran couldn't help lowering his head. Show it to the imperial physician. Madame Jiang handed the handkerchief in her hand to a servant girl beside her. The servant girl took it and handed it to the imperial physician. The imperial physician didn't reach out to take it, but just sniffed it and said, "Madam, there is a medicinal fragrance in this handkerchief that can make people hyper and delirious." What? Madame Jiang didn't understand and asked. The madams around also strained their ears and listened to their words carefully. Inventing then glanced thoughtfully at Zhao Shiran, who was standing aside with his head lowered, and then looked at Madame Jiang. She was not those madams and had a good relationship with Zhao Shiran in the past. Although they had different reputations, they were both excellent. Infanta Yuan and judged Zhao Shiran by her own standards and always felt that his good reputation was not so simple. For example, she and Xiao Yenru. Was it also an example of Zhao Shiran? Madam, I'll make it clear. The medicinal fragrance on this handkerchief can make people delirious and make them say something uncontrollable or do something out of control. Although the smell is light, the medicinal effect is quite strong. You won't feel it at first, but you will feel it after a while. The imperial physician explained. Is someone trying to hurt Madame of Marquis Xing? A madam said in surprise. Not to harm Madame of Marquis Xing, but to harm Princess Chen. Someone pointed to the inner room and said, the one lying inside was Princess Chen. Compared to Jiang Shi looked fine. Harm Princess Chen? Another madam sucked in a breath of cold air and habitually covered the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief. Suddenly, she glanced at the handkerchief in the maid's hand and immediately took it away, not daring to wipe it on the corner of her mouth and nose. It's no wonder that Madame Zhang's behavior today was so abnormal. She made such a fuss in just a moment. There was clearly nothing going on, but she made it sound so plausible. There was another madam who was concerned about something else. She thought of Madame Zhang's behavior and actions just now. They were indeed different from the past and seemed particularly stupid. But even if the handkerchief has this kind of effect, what does it have to do with Princess Chen? Why did Princess Chen faint? Zhao Shiran raised his head and asked softly. Was Xiao Wanru's coma an accident? The imperial physician frowned. This matter was really not easy to explain. Under normal circumstances, Princess Chen would only act abnormally and not faint. Imperial physician, look at this. Yu Jie came out of the inner room and pulled down a sachet hanging on her waist. This sachet was not exquisite. It was simple and a little rough in terms of craftsmanship. It was made by Yu Jie herself. She was not good at needlework, so she could only do some simple sewing and mending. It took her a lot of effort to make such a sachet. The madams present were all good at needlework. They all saw such a rough sachet hanging on the body of Princess Chen's personal maid just now and smiled subconsciously. This kind of sachet, which was obviously low-grade and looked down on, was not worn by their personal maids and old maids. They didn't expect that the personal maid of Princess Chen would wear such an inconspicuous and even extremely ugly sachet. Even though Yu Jie's sachet did not have any special thread or technique, many people still saw it. This was the reason. It was really too ugly and rough. Imperial physician, please have a look. There is a medicine that I made myself to clear the heart and calm the mind. It is very easy to calm the mind and the smell is not strong. I feel that I can be more calm when I wear it while serving our princess. Yu Jie said as she handed the sachet to the imperial physician. The imperial physician took it, smelled it, picked up a needle, picked up the thread on it, smelled it carefully again, poured some of the contents into his palm, smelled it again, looked at it, and then nodded. Yes, it's some heart-calming medicine. After saying that, he nodded and then shook his head. No wonder, no wonder. Imperial physician, what do you mean? Why didn't Madame Jiang faint, but Princess Chen did? Infanta Yuan and caught this point keenly and asked. The imperial physician returned the sachet in his hand to Yu Jie and then said, Madame Zhang's handkerchief has an emotional and exciting smell of medicine. Princess Chen should also be implicated, or? The imperial physician paused and looked suspiciously at Madame Jiang and Zhao Shiran beside her. Since this thing happened in Marquis Xing's mansion, it should have something to do with the two female masters of Marquis Xing's mansion. Imperial physician, please tell me. Yu Jie thought that the imperial physician wanted to keep them guessing, so she held the sachet anxiously and said, or someone wanted to hurt Princess Chen, but it was a coincidence that a maid of Princess Chen wore a heart-calming medicine. In addition, Princess Chen seemed to be annoyed before and tried hard to bear it, so she used a lot of energy and spirit. Later, although the heart-calming medicine helped her, she was weak and fainted for a while. The imperial physician vaguely said that someone might want to hurt Princess Chen. Of course, it was also a coincidence. The imperial physician means that when Princess Chen smelled the medicine in her mother's handkerchief, she tried hard to bear it. The medicine in the maid's sachet didn't work at first and then took effect later. But didn't this maid always serve Princess Chen? Or did the maid not wear the sachet at first and then put it on later? Zhao Shiran looked at Yu Jie with his eyes wide open in surprise. Marquis Xing's mansion was a suspect, and the servant girl in front of him seemed to be a suspect as well. To further extend, was Princess Chen herself also a suspect? This was Princess Chen's personal servant girl. This was Princess Chen's personal maid, and it was said that she was brought here from Jiangzhou, not sent by Marquis Xing's mansion. In the room, Xiao Wanru silently raised the corner of her mouth. Zhao Shiran was very powerful. With a specious sentence, he not only responded to the imperial physician's vague words, but also drew everyone's attention to her. A maid did not dare to deal with her, the princess, but what if it was her intention? Otherwise, how could a sachet with the corresponding medicine suddenly appear? It happened to conflict with the previous medicine, so that she, who tried hard to bear it, not only failed to get rid of the previous medicine, but also fainted because of the rush. However, what Zhao Shiran wanted to say was what she had thought about. She wanted to see how Marquis Xing's mansion would end today. Madame Jiang was not easy to deal with. It was easy to talk to her when she was confused. At this time, when she heard her clear voice, she became sober. It was not so easy for Zhao Shiran to fool around with Madame Jiang. First, Grandma is not right. After our princess entered the room, Madame Jiang asked me to do this and that, and then asked me to stay far away from the princess. It was not until Infanta Yuan and several madams came in that I had time to serve our princess. After that, Infanta Yuan and the madams left. I have been with the princess, Yu Jie said unhurriedly. Her princess had already guessed these possibilities. She looked at Zhao Shiran. She really thought this first grandma was good. Now it seemed that it was just as princess had said. This first grandma was not simple, and she had also intervened in this matter. It may be that Princess Chen first smelled the medicine of Madame of Marquis Xing, and then smelled the medicine of the maid. After that she couldn't suppress it, so she fainted. Since this is the reason, it is not a big problem. She will be fine after a short rest and take some calming medicine. After finding the cause, the imperial physician did not want to stay here. This kind of thing was not a good thing, so he should leave at this time. After saying that, he turned around and was about to write a prescription for Xiao Wanru. Thank you, imperial physician. I'll ask someone to take you to the wing room to write a prescription. Zhao Shiran said softly. He waved his hand to call a maid and asked her to lead the imperial physician away. Madame Jiang said nothing with a gloomy face. Imperial physician, please wait a minute. Infanta Yuan, and suddenly stopped him. Infanta Yuan, do you have anything else to say? Zhao Shiran asked with a smile. The imperial physician stopped and had a bad feeling in his heart. He really did not want to get involved in this kind of thing. He just wanted to write a prescription and leave. As for what would happen next, it had nothing to do with him, a small imperial physician. Imperial physician, can you help me analyze something? Infanta Yuan said with an extremely dignified smile, but her imposing manner was amazing. As the most valued granddaughter of Ruiping Great Elder Princess, Infanta Yuan had always been imposing, which was also a condition to convince other noble ladies. In the past, she had also solved the disputes for the noble ladies. Her imposing manner was one of the indispensable reasons. Those noble ladies were not convinced by each other. When they were together, it was easy for them to get into trouble. If one of them did not handle it well, it would cause other things to happen. Infanta Yuan, and is also not feeling well? Why don't you go aside? Princess Chen needs to rest here. Zhao Xiran had a bad feeling, so he hurriedly said with a smile. The imperial physician nodded repeatedly. As long as it was not related to Princess Chen, he felt fine now. Chapter 1006. I'm afraid not. I have to explain it here. After all, it's related to Princess Chen, and Princess Chen's people can't hear it, right? We can't make the decision for Princess Chen. Infanta Yuan, and reached out and put all the madams inside. The madams also nodded repeatedly. In fact, they were also panicking. This kind of thing was no longer a matter of gossip. Now, they couldn't leave, so they only hoped that it could be reduced to a small matter. Infanta Yuan An's words were very reasonable, so they could only nod. If the Madam of Jiang was really the elder of Princess Chen and loved her, she could actually make the decision for Princess Chen. But in the current situation, the Madam of Jiang was not clean, so no one dared to say that they could make the decision for Princess Chen. Before Zhao Xiran said anything, Infanta Yuan An had asked the imperial physician, Princess Chen will behave abnormally and lose her mind temporarily after taking this medicine. What if there is another man at this time? As soon as she said this, everyone's face changed dramatically. A timid madam even trembled with the cup in her hand and knocked the lid of the cup with a sound. Then the room became strangely quiet. Qiu Yu of the Ministry of Justice was there at that time. He said that he was handling the case. If there was something else in it, did it mean that he wanted to ruin Princess Chen's reputation? Prince Chen had left the capital city, and someone wanted to deal with Princess Chen. This kind of thing would never be done by ordinary people, so it must have something to do with the royal family. The crown prince had not been elected, but the crown prince had been appointed secretly. Was this also true? Imperial physician, this matter is of great importance. Does someone just want to make Princess Chen behave abnormally temporarily and make a fool of herself? Or does he want to ruin Princess Chen's reputation and finally cause something even more serious? Now that Prince Chen is not in the capital city, this kind of thing should be reported to the Empress Dowager. Please tell me. Infanta Yuan An understood that the imperial physician wanted to avoid it, so she said it very generously and firmly. Even if the imperial physician wanted to be vague, he could only bite the bullet and say, if there is really a man near Princess Chen may indeed do something out of control when she loses her mind. For example, holding that man, or cold sweat started to form on the imperial physician's forehead, and he felt a chill on his back. He was actually just an imperial physician, and he didn't understand things that were too complicated. Princess Yuan then suddenly smiled as she looked at the imperial physician, who was sweating profusely. She waved her hand and said, Imperial physician, please write a prescription. Yes, thank you, Your Highness. The imperial physician nodded repeatedly and turned around to leave. It seemed that he was fleeing in panic. This matter would definitely be made known to the Empress Dowager. The madams were all flustered and sat up straight, for fear of slacking off in the slightest. At this time, they had to intervene even if they didn't want to. It was obvious that someone plotted against Princess Chen. If the Empress Dowager asked about it and found that they just sat and watched the show without helping Princess Chen, she would definitely reprimand them. Who is Princess Chen? She was the person that Prince Chen cared about, and Prince Chen was the grandson that the Empress Dowager had doted on for more than 10 years. It was said that when Princess Chen went on a diplomatic mission, she entrusted Princess Chen to the Empress Dowager. Now that something happened in Marquis Xing's mansion, if they didn't help, the Empress Dowager would feel embarrassed. Madame Jiang, the smell of medicine on your handkerchief. Where did it come from? You can't say that you are in poor health and always use such a handkerchief, can you? A madam looked at Madame Jiang and then at Zhao Xiran. Finally, her eyes fell on Madame Jiang. In her opinion, Madame Jiang was the most likely one. Zhao Shiran was a kind person, and they had seen how Madame Jiang served him just now. Everything was for Madame Jiang, so she would definitely not do such a thing. In contrast, Madame Jiang had a criminal record. Madame of Marquis Xing, who do you think wants to harm Princess Qin? Madame of Marquis Xing, why did Lord Qiu find the place where Princess Chen will go for the Dharma conference? Everyone knows that Princess Chen will definitely go there. Madame of Marquis Xing, if Princess Chen's servant girl didn't happen to wear such a sachet, would Princess Chen have an accident? Madame of Marquis Xing, Madame of Marquis Xing, several madams asked Madame Jiang one after another, and they all called her Madame of Marquis Xing, which indeed made Madame Jiang the target of all suspicion. The blue veins on Madame Jiang's forehead stood out, and all she heard was, Madame of Marquis Xing. In the past, this was her favorite title, and she felt happy every time she heard it. But now she felt a headache and a sense of madness appeared in her eyes. She held the handkerchief in her hand and smelled it the most. She felt a headache, and the blue veins on the fire fork on her forehead bulged violently. The voice in her ears was extremely irritated and looming, but she couldn't get rid of it no matter how hard she tried, as if there were countless insects buzzing in her ears. Madame Jiang suddenly stood up with a fierce look in her eyes. She reached out to Zhao Shiran, who was standing beside her with an extremely awkward smile, and slapped him hard. The heavy slap interrupted everyone's voice. No one had expected that Madame Jiang would take action at this time, and the person she slapped was her daughter-in-law. Seeing Zhao Shiran stagger back a few steps and hit the corner of the table on one side, many people didn't react. Zhao Shiran screamed and bent down with his hands covering his stomach. Someone finally reacted, reached out to point at a pool of blood on Zhao Shiran's skirt, and screamed loudly, "Blood, blood." After another scream in the outer hall, Zhao Shiran was taken to a room on the side to have a rest. Several servants of Prince Chen's mansion were guarding Xiao Wanru. The medicine was soon boiled. Xiao Wanru took it and found that it was some medicine for calming the mind. She only took a few sips and put it aside. "How is it going?" "They said they couldn't keep the child. If you want to get pregnant in the future, you have to take good care of it," Yu Jie said. It was so noisy that even old madam was alarmed. At this time, she was also accompanying Zhao Shiran in the room next door. It was because Zhao Shiran was pregnant. However, after such a collision, the child was tossed away. It was such a big commotion that Yu Jie naturally heard it when she went outside to get the herbs. They were all in the same courtyard. "Let's go," Xiao Wanru said. Yu Jie was stunned. "Princess, isn't it inappropriate for us to leave at this time?" Marquis Xing's mansion was in a mess now. It was unreasonable for the princess to leave at this time. "I can't even protect myself, let alone the others. Moreover, since this matter has become like this, I'm afraid I won't be able to protect myself." He had to inform Imperial grandmother about this. "Old madam should be eager for me to leave at this time," Xiao Wanru said calmly and looked out of the window at the figures coming and going. Old madam's arrival had alarmed the entire Marquis Xing's mansion. "It's useless for me to stay here. It's not good for me to stay here. I'd better go back first and don't make trouble for Marquis Xing's mansion. Old madam is too partial. I don't believe that she doesn't know that the princess fainted before." Yu Jie curled her lips and looked out of the window. The princess had been in trouble for a long time, but old madam didn't even see her. Now old madam came with a large group of people just after first grandma had an accident. Yu Jie didn't believe that old madam didn't know what had happened to the princess before. So what if she knows? So what if she doesn't know? At that time, she was waiting here to make trouble. How could she come here? With her identity, she couldn't have come to watch the fun. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. "Princess, do you mean that old madam didn't dare to come at that time?" Yu Jie rolled her eyes and asked. "If she came, she would be in charge of this matter. If she didn't come, she wouldn't be involved in this matter." Xiao Wanru said coldly. She knew old madam's character best. When there was trouble, she wouldn't come. She would even pretend to be sick and lie in bed to forget what had happened today. But now she couldn't avoid it. "Go and report to old madam that although I have woken up, I still feel unwell, so I have to go back to the mansion first." Xiao Wanru told Yujie. Yujie nodded and left. After a while, she came back with Nanny Yu. Nanny Yu bowed to Xiao Wanru first and said, "Princess, the mansion is in a mess now. Old madam has no time to entertain you. You can go back first and come back when you feel better. The religious rite will last for 3 days." In other words, Xiao Wanru would definitely come within 3 days without any other reason. The religious rite of her parents couldn't be neglected. Old madam was sure that Xiao Wanru would come back, so she didn't stop her from leaving. "Nanny Yu, I'll come back tomorrow." Xiao Wanru nodded and said softly, Okay, I'll go and tell old madam later." Hearing Xiao Wanru's words, Nanny Yu nodded repeatedly and promised with a smile. Since first grandma had an accident and lived next door, it was inappropriate to keep Princess Chin here at this time. After all, she was a young daughter-in-law who had just been married. She shouldn't get involved in this kind of thing because she was afraid of being unlucky. What was more, it was the Imperial family's misfortune. Marquis Xing's mansion couldn't bear the responsibility. If the Empress Dowager investigated it, they would be reprimanded. After Xiao Wanru cleaned up, she went back with a group of people. At a corner, a servant girl rushed out and accidentally bumped into Yujie. Yujie was fine, but the servant girl took a few steps back and almost fell. Then she bowed sideways to Yujie in a hurry and ran away in panic. There was a letter in Yujie's hand, which was given to her by the servant girl just now. She looked in the direction where the servant girl left and found that it was the outer courtyard. Yujie calmly stuffed the letter into her sleeve, continued to catch up with Xiao Wanru and went to the parking lot. When they arrived at the parking lot, Yujie helped Xiao Wanru get into the carriage, and then she climbed into the carriage. After sitting firmly and the carriage started to move, she took out a letter from her sleeve and handed it to Xiao Wanru. "Your Highness, this is what the servant girl gave me just now." Chapter 1007. Someone from Marquis Xing's mansion secretly wrote a letter to her? She was very surprised. Xiao Wanru took out the letter and looked at it. She didn't see any signature, which showed that the writer was very cautious. Her eyes fell on the words, which were strong and sharp. It couldn't be a servant in the mansion, but a man. She was shocked. After seeing the content clearly, Xiao Wanru's face changed dramatically and she clenched the letter in her hand tightly. "Princess?" Yujie sat beside Xiao Wanru and said hurriedly. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on the letter again. It was still the same words on the paper. The content was very simple, which described Xiao Jing's whereabouts. More than a decade ago, Xiao Jing went out of the capital city and happened to go to Jiangzhou. Or not only to Jiangzhou, but also to the place where the battlefield broke out. She didn't know exactly where it was. Yes, this letter was written by Shi. He implicitly thanked Xiao Wanru for the savant's building and identified himself. Then he told her directly about Xiao Jing, saying that his father told him that Xiao Jing had sneaked out of the capital city 10 years ago. At that time, Shi's father, who was also at the border, met Xiao Jing by accident and received him. Xiao Jing said that he just came out to see the world. He said that Duke Xing's mansion was also a military family. The mansion asked him to come out to see the world, but he didn't join the army. He just secretly wandered around and secretly sent someone to look for something. Shi's father was stationed in that area. Although he didn't doubt Xiao Jing's behavior, there was a war at that time, so he paid special attention to Xiao Jing's behavior and found that Xiao Jing seemed to be looking for someone. At that time, he didn't think too much about it and then Xiao Jing left. When he left, Xiao Jing repeatedly asked him not to tell others about it, saying that he just looked around and didn't want others to know. It was not a big deal, so General Yan didn't care about it. After they parted, General Yan was also busy fighting and suppressing the rebellion. When the war was over, he heard that something had happened to heir of Duke Xing and he had died. Only Infanta Qinghua, who was pregnant, was found. As for the specific matter, because it had little to do with Yan's mansion, he didn't ask more. They only said that it was a pity that the heir of Duke Xing died in this rebellion at an early age. After so many years, General Yan had almost forgotten about it. Moreover, since then, the relationship between Duke Xing's mansion and Yan's mansion in the capital city had become better and better. Xiao Jing, who had become Duke Xing, had always been kind to General Yen. Even if he had some slight doubts, they all disappeared with the wind. But after Yen Shi went to the capital city this time, Wang Xingshue's schemes and traps were vaguely related to Marquis Xing's mansion. Yen Shi grasped some doubts and wrote to her father to ask about it. General Yen also found it strange and blamed Yen Shi for overthinking things. After reprimanding him with a letter, he added another letter about the past. After reading these things, Yen Shi didn't think it was a big deal. But now the incident in the savants building pointed to Yen Shi. It was obvious that Yen Shi had been framed. Yen Shi was not stupid. After thinking about it, she thought of the letter her father wrote later. After thinking about it, she wrote it to Xiao Wanru. He didn't know what had happened to the former heir of Duke Xing, but he had an intuition that there was something wrong with it. After reading it again, Xiao Wanru's face suddenly turned pale. "Your Highness." Seeing that the situation was not good, Yu Jie hurriedly came over to help her. Xiao Wanru had already spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body went limp and she slowly fell down. Her eyes were blurred. Hazy blood. Xiao Jing, sure enough, was, "Your Highness, Your Highness." Yu Jie's scream was getting farther and farther in her ears. "Daddy, what flower is this?" The young girl was dressed very beautifully. She pulled the hand of the handsome young man who was carrying her and said in a sweet voice. The flowers in her hand had long lost their color and looked messy. The child didn't even know that they had been scratched by the flowers. "This is your mother's favorite flower. Why did you pick it? Be careful that your mother will beat you later." The young man looked at his daughter with a smile, reached out to touch her hair, and said gently, "Mom is here, Mom is here?" The girl looked around and buried her head in the young man's arms. "Daddy, hug me." "Mom won't beat me." "How dare you ask your father to protect you?" A woman's voice came from behind. A young and beautiful woman came out with a gentle and amiable face. "Mom is here, Mom is here." Dad. The little girl twisted her body more and more into the man's arms, as if in this way her mother couldn't see her. She fluttered her hands and stained the flower juice on the man's body and face. "Miss, come here. I'll hold you." The maid came forward to hold her. "I don't want peace, no peace." The girl twisted her body hard, patted the maid's hand hard, raised her head aggrievedly, looked at her mother standing behind her father, and said, "Mom, Mom, hug me." In a short while, she forgot that her mother was going to beat her just now. Looking at her coquettish look, the young man and the young man couldn't help laughing. "Dadmum, don't go." "Dadmum." Xiao Wanru suddenly screamed and sat up. She looked frightened and stared straight ahead. "Your Highness, Your Highness." Several maids waiting quietly came over one by one and shouted anxiously. The calls in her ears made Xiao Wanru wake up from the dreamlike environment. She looked around and found that she was in her bedroom in the familiar environment. "Your Highness, are you okay?" Nanny Yu walked to the bed and asked anxiously. Xiao Wanru raised her body, and her face was still pale. "Kaizen." That's right, Kazuko had always been by his mother's side as her personal maid. Kazuko had never existed before in his memories. But now, this name actually popped up in his head. Nanny Yu and the others looked at each other and didn't understand the meaning of Xiao Wanru's words. What was the so-called Kaizen? Or something else? "Your Highness," Chu Lu said. "How did I come back?" Xiao Wanru looked at Yu Jie, who she saw before she fainted. "Don't worry, Mississippi. I have put the things away. They are under your pillow. When I came back, I said that you suddenly fainted in the carriage and vomited blood." Yu Jie understood and explained hurriedly. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on the bowl on the table in front of the bed, which had a strong smell of medicine. "The Imperial physician has been here." "What did he say?" "After I came back, Nanny Zheng immediately asked the Imperial physician in the Imperial Palace to come over. After asking about your Highness's condition, he prescribed the medicine. He said that it might be the side effect of the medicine that made you suddenly vomit blood and faint." Yu Jie replied, looked at Xiao Wanru's complexion, and said worriedly. The princess did not look very good at the moment. Xiao Wanru fell silent for a while, and her watery eyes were slightly cold. She did not speak for a long time. Nanny Yu was very worried. "Your Highness, what did you think of?" If you think of something, just say it. Don't keep it in your heart. The prince is not here now. If you get sick because of it, it will be really bad. Nanny you, don't worry. I'm fine. I just figured something out. You can leave first, except for Qing. Xiao Wenru calmed down, raised her eyes slowly and said, although they were still worried about Xiao Wenru's health, she looked much calmer, so they could only leave one by one. Nanny Yu was busy, so she went to do her work first. Several principal maids stood outside the door to serve her. Only Qing was left in the room. Look at this. What does it mean? Xiao Wenru took out the letter from under her pillow and handed it to Qing. Qing was the best at this. Qing took it respectfully and read it carefully. The more she read, the more she frowned. Do you see anything? Xiao Wenru asked slowly with her eyes so deep that they were almost bottomless. She wanted to prove her idea from Qing. In fact, she had always had this idea, but she could not find any evidence. What she saw now was her subjective idea. She wanted to see it from others' eyes. Qing was the best candidate and the most proficient candidate. Your Highness, Marquis Xing left the capital city secretly, so he didn't want others to know that it was an accident that Child Yan's father, General Yan, saw Marquis Xing. Hearing Xiao Wenru's question, Qing said slowly, after that, the two mansions got on good terms. It seems that Marquis Xing got on good terms with General Yan and didn't want him to tell the past. If it was just a small matter, it would be impossible for them to get on good terms for such a long time. This time, Child Yan went to the capital city to take the Imperial examination. With his talent and learning, he should be selected. Since he was selected and had a good family background, it was normal for him to stay in the capital city as an official. But now someone framed him, and the purpose was to stop him from staying in the capital city or to stop him from being an official in the capital city. Qing analyzed rationally. This matter involves Marquis Xing's mansion. I have a guess. If this matter is really done by Marquis Xing's mansion, it must be Marquis Xing's idea. Wang Xingxue is such a person that few people can order him around, and Marquis Xing is one of them. After connecting the dots, it should be that Marquis Xing doesn't want anyone from the Yan family to be an official in the capital city and is afraid that they will tell the past. As Qing spoke, she became more and more certain. These things happened more than a decade ago and now. All kinds of things showed the relationship between them. Some things that she couldn't figure out in the past immediately became clear. Originally, all the clues were not solved now, but more than a decade ago. Qing had helped Xiao Wenru investigate a lot of things secretly, so she also knew what Xiao Wenru cared about. Looking at Xiao Wenru, her lips trembled twice and she couldn't say it out loud. The princess must have thought of it and spat out blood in grief and indignation. If she told the truth, would the princess be unable to bear it? Although the princess had already thought of this cleverly, it was another matter if she told the truth. You told the truth. Xiao Wenru's voice became a little hoarse. To tell the truth, the past life and the present life. Things appeared in front of her one by one. She knew more and had more experience than Qing, so she had already connected the past and the present. Her eyes turned slightly red, and the look in her eyes suddenly turned sharp and dark. Marquis Xing has something to do with the death of the princess's father. Qing gritted her teeth and said in a clear voice, Child Yan got into trouble because of this. Chapter 1008. In order to prevent Madame Yan from entering the capital city, Xiao Jing has really gone to great lengths to conceal his whereabouts on that day. Xiao Wenru suddenly looked calm, but the bottom of her eyes was as sharp and cold as a knife. Therefore, this was the ultimate reason for the tragedy of Yan Shi and herself in the last life. In this life, she had nothing to do with Yan Shi, so when Xiao Jing dealt with Yan Shi, she couldn't be involved, and she even ruined the plan. Then she found out the truth after the two facts were verified, the truth that she had hidden for 2 lives. Qing, can you find out Xiao Jing's whereabouts more than a decade ago? He took a deep breath and suppressed the boiling blood in his heart. All the icy cold blood slowly flowed from his bones to his heart. At this moment, his heart was also cold, as if it had been shattered into pieces of ice, sharp with a bloody aura. In fact, this was only part of the truth. In the past, she had found the wrong direction, so she failed. It turned out that the key was Xiao Jing. Your Highness, when Master left, he told me that if you want to find out anything, just tell me. Laura lowered her head and said. Xiao Wanru narrowed her eyes and nodded solemnly. Okay, go and check it out. More than a decade ago, when my father had an accident, Xiao Jing was there. Did he happen to be nearby? Her father's death must have something to do with Xiao Jing. At present, she had no evidence, but she had a reason. For the hereditary title, he even killed his own brother. His father had an accident, and the first branch almost couldn't keep their children, while the second branch rose step by stepping on the first branch's flesh and blood. The title of nobility was not rightfully obtained, so the Jiang family wanted to eliminate it again and again. She killed herself, and then how? Everything was for the title of nobility. The title of Duke Xing or the current Marquis Xing. She silently raised the corners of her mouth with a cold smile, and her eyes were so deep that there was almost no warmth. Not only was there no warmth, but there was even a trace of bloodthirst in them. In 2 lives, there were some grudges that should be avenged, but it was not the right time. Up to now, Madame Dowager was still scheming against her and the Madame of Jiang. But Zhao Shiran intervened. Now she even lost the baby in her belly. The opportunity was in front of her, a good opportunity. She would not be soft-hearted to Marquis Xing's mansion. Your Highness, an urgent letter. A guard rushed in, knelt down on one knee, and reported loudly with the letter in his hand raised high. Show it to this king. Chu Luchen said lazily. His beautiful eyes slowly opened. His courtyard was the best courtyard in the courier station. It was several times bigger than the other courtyards. It was originally prepared for the royal family with a high status like him. At this time, the night had just risen, and many lamps had been lit in the room, making it as bright as day. Prince Chen was in poor health, so he couldn't get tired. Along the way, he often stopped at this time, for fear that he would be tired. Prince Chen was a real noble, and it was his first business trip. The guard presented the letter to Xiao Xuanzi. Xiao Xuanzi took it and handed it to Chu Luchen. Chu Luchen read it quickly. After reading it, he said with an evil voice, Since Marquis Xing's mansion is involved in this matter, we have to let Imperial grandmother know, lest she is not clear about it and be fooled by others. What do you mean? Xiao Xuanzi bent down and asked. Go and inform Empress Dowager and my uncle. Chu Luchen said slowly, with his beautiful eyes quiet and treacherous. But this matter is not a big deal. No matter what it is, Princess can handle it. Xiao Xuanzi reminded him. He also saw his master and 5th Miss Xiao get together. Although 5th Miss Xiao, the current Princess Qin, walked slowly, she was careful at every step. Even Xiao Xuanzi admired her secretly. The seemingly weak Princess Chen was actually not as useless as she looked on the surface. She was the real Princess Chen with means, not the kind of delicate canary in a cage. How can this prince's princess be bullied by others? Chu Luchen said gloomily, It happens that I want to write to Imperial grandmother. Let's ask about this together. The effect of telling or asking was the same. The difference was that one was active, and the other was passive. The active would make people doubt his intentions, while the passive would seem to be more sincere. Yes, I understand. Xiao Xuanzi understood tacitly. The princess was indeed the person that his master cared about the most. He knew that the princess would be fine, but he still couldn't rest assured. After returning to the mansion, he had to show more respect to the princess. She was really the top of his heart. Your Highness, Commandery Prince Qing is here. Another guard came in and reported. Xiao Xuanzi waved his hand, and the guard who came in before bowed and retreated. Recently, Commandery Prince Qing always came to talk to his master when he had nothing to do. Sometimes, when his master ignored him, he could talk to himself for a long time. Tell him that I'm asleep. Chu Luchen said casually, folded the letter in his hand, and put it in his sleeve. The guard answered and left. After a while, he came in again and reported, General Qin is also here. He and Commandery Prince Qing said that they have something important to tell you. It was the first time that two people came together. This Ningyuan army general usually kept a low profile and rarely came here. Let them in, Chu Luchun said after calculating the route. Qin Huaiyong and Chu Qing came in together. After bowing to Chu Luchun, they sat down, and their faces didn't look very good. Qin Huaiyong frowned tightly, and Chu Qing's face was a little pale. After Xiao Xuanzi ordered the servants to serve tea, he stood behind Chu Luchun, glanced at Qin Huaiyong and Chu Qing very quickly, and then lowered his head obediently. Your Highness, we're about to arrive. Your Highness, you'd better come up with a plan quickly. Qin Huaiyong said first. It had been a few days. Prince Chen was not in a hurry, but he couldn't wait any longer. This time, the emperor repeatedly said that Prince Chen was in charge of everything when he left the capital city. Qin Huaiyong was wary of this kind of prince who lived a comfortable life in the capital city, but in fact, he didn't think highly of him. A general at the border had his own way to get along with people. In fact, this matter can't be rushed. If the Su kingdom really wants to marry a princess, Commandery Prince Qing is a good choice. Chu Luchun knew what he meant by asking this question, and he deliberately delayed it. Prince Qin, you can't do this. Hearing this, Chu Qing shook his hands and said anxiously, Your Majesty knows that I'm already engaged, and now I even have a concubine. How can I get engaged again? He didn't want to marry a woman from the Su kingdom. The legitimate son he gave birth to must have a pure bloodline, without the bloodline of an alien, so that he could have an advantage. So what? I can just marry a co-wife. Do you want me to marry a co-wife? Chu Luchun said with a faint smile. His handsome and deep eyes turned and fell on Chu Qing's face, which almost made the smile on his face stiffen uncontrollably. She was also a co-wife. Of course, Chu Liuchun's co-wife had a high status, which also meant that no one could interfere in Chu Liuchun's marriage. What was more, he had always been weak. According to the rumors in the palace, the original intention of the emperor and the empress dowager was to marry a few more co-wives for him. But if he really married a few more co-wives, something might happen and he might die faster. There was only one princess consort in Prince Chen's mansion, which was also the result of the discussion between the empress dowager and the emperor. It's not very good. They have already been engaged. Although a co-wife is also a wife, she is always inferior to a legitimate wife. If the princess of the Su kingdom wants to marry someone, it's better to marry someone who is not engaged. Chu Qing chose his words carefully. He couldn't accept the princess of the Su kingdom. In fact, when they left the capital city, there was no such saying. But on the way, they got the news that the Su kingdom intended to marry the princess to the envoy this time. Although Prince Chen didn't go to the envoy, he came here with 2 envoys after all. After that, he stationed troops at the border, and his status was noble. Of course, the more noble the status of the Su kingdom, the better. As for Prince Chen's health, it was not so important. As long as he bore the title of Princess Chen, it didn't matter whether Prince Chen was in poor health or would die early. After the news of the Su kingdom was found out, Qin Huaiyong sent it to Chu Luchun. Chu Luchun said that he would think about it. But after thinking about it for so long, Qin Huaiyong couldn't wait any longer. They were about to reach the border, and it was up to Chu Luchun to decide how to deal with it. Commandery Prince Qin, do you mean Prince Xin who is not married? Chu Luchun raised his eyebrows. Chu Qing lowered his head, and a strong killing intent and jealousy flashed in his eyes. They were both nephews of the emperor. Why could Chu Luchun be favored by the emperor, but he couldn't? He was an invalid who used his sickly body to make the empress dowager and the emperor love and care for him. But she, who was in good health, didn't receive any attention. Now, he even wanted to plot against her marriage. He clenched his fists hard under his sleeves, and then slowly relaxed them. We can't make the decision on this matter. Let's report it to the emperor. When Chu Luchun said that he would think about it for a few days, Chu Qing had actually secretly sent a secret letter to the emperor. The nephew he cared about was not a capable person. He actually hid this kind of thing. If the Su kingdom married the princess in this way, it would be a peace marriage between the two countries, and Chu Luchun couldn't stop it. The so-called candidate was not something that Chu Luchun could decide. Didn't he want to marry the princess of the Su kingdom? Since she was a co-wife, he was suitable, and Chu Luchen was more suitable. Princess Chen couldn't oppose the emperor's decree. Report it to the emperor? Chu Luchen suddenly smiled, and the treachery in his eyes became more and more difficult to explain. Qin Huaiyong looked up at Chu Luchen, and his heart skipped a beat. As a general who had been to the battlefield, he should be very calm. But when he saw Chu Luchen at this time, his face changed slightly. Prince Chen in front of him looked cold and creepy, with a sense of bloodthirstiness that made people nervous. It was not completely wrong. Although Prince Chen looked gentle in the past, there was a faint aura similar to that on the battlefield. This feeling could only be understood by generals who had been to the battlefield. After all, Prince Chen, who had a gentle appearance, sometimes looked amiable. But now, it seemed that the thin veil of tenderness was slowly falling. Was this the true face of Prince Chen? Qin Huaiyong's hands and feet suddenly trembled, and he felt cold. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Chapter 1009. Complete. The latest chapter on the medical skills of the Crown Princess was updated as soon as possible. Of course, Qin Huaiyong's fear did not escape Chu Liuchen's eyes. He looked at Qin Huaiyong and gave him an elegant smile. The matter of petitioning the emperor was originally this prince's matter. Both of you are my assistants. Could it be that you want to secretly leave this prince and secretly write a memorial to the emperor to lodge a complaint against this prince? Speaking of this, Chu Luchen narrowed his eyes with the same smile, but because his beautiful eyes narrowed, he looked a little more gloomy. Are you going to push me out behind my back? Chu Qing's eyebrows twitched fiercely a few times. He did have such a plan. Of course, he would not take the initiative to suggest anything to the emperor. However, when he made the request, he skillfully pushed Chu Luchen in front of him. He implied that Chu Luchen could take the post. On the one hand, it was because he was the most important person on this trip. On the other hand, it would be much later if someone was sent here. If one of the 3 people on this trip had to marry the rumored princess of the Su kingdom, Chu Luchen was the most suitable one. Even though Chu Qing was not convinced, he had to admit that Chu Luchen was more handsome than him. As long as the princess of the Su kingdom saw him, she would definitely want to marry him. For various reasons, Chu Qing was very confident. But that was in the past. Now his eyes fell on a letter that Chu Luchen picked up from the corner of the table. Suddenly, cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The more he looked at the letter, the more familiar it looked. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it might be the letter that he had sent to the capital before. The letter was sent together with the memorial. Now that the letter was in Chu Liuchen's hands, where was the memorial? He looked up at Chu Luchen in horror. Did Chu Luchen dare to rob the memorial that he sent to the capital? Your Highness, we don't dare. We just refuse to report the truth. Qin Huaiyong must have experienced many hardships. He said calmly. At least he looked calm on the surface, but his heart was also in turmoil. He also saw the letter that he wrote to his home in the capital. It was also sent to the capital with the memorial. How did this letter end up in Chu Liuchen's hands? What did Chu Luchen want to do? Don't dare. Chu Luchen curled his lips casually and stood up lazily. His thin lips were slightly raised, and the light color of his lips made him look a little cold. Gentlemen, what I want to tell you is, don't play any tricks. Just do what the princess of the Su kingdom should do. If you use false information to confuse the emperor, I can totally imprison you. Chu Luchen pinched the letter on the table as if he was pinching something fun, and then he turned around and walked inside. Your Highness. Chu Qing couldn't help saying. Anything else, Commander Prince Qing? Chu Luchen turned his head with interest. He also had a smile on his face. It was the same elegant smile, but there was a hint of coldness in it. For the first time, Chu Qing felt that he had come to the wrong place. He had originally come here to make a name for himself. He had thought that a sickly person would say that he was the master. Could he do it? What about now? Prince Qin, we are the envoys of the emperor to the Su kingdom. Although Prince Qin is the master, we are the envoys. Your Highness, you can't interfere in our affairs too much. Qin Huaiyong also stood up. Seeing that Chu Qing couldn't even say a word for a while, he could only continue his words. He was also unconvinced. They were the envoys, but now they were even forbidden to send memorials to the capital city? But, Ningyuan Army General, if you think that you can interrogate the emperor without me, then just send the memorials. As for whether it can reach His Majesty, or whether it can be considered as the words of a despicable person who intentionally bewitches His Majesty, that's not something that I should consider. In any case, I've already done my best. Chu Liuchen's extremely long eyelashes cast uneven shadows on his eyelids. He slowly raised his head and said with a faint smile, "My two friends, the mission seems to be not difficult, but if it is not easy, it will be a disaster. Since you are so righteous, disregarding your own family and wholeheartedly working for the sake of everyone, I wish you victory in advance and wish you success." Chu Liuchen said with a smile. After that, he laughed loudly and turned to leave, seeming to be in a good mood. The two men standing behind him watched Chu Liuchen leave, but they couldn't say a word, and cold sweat came out of their foreheads. Qin Huaiyong had a family, and he was living a good life now. Compared with so many years in the past, only in the past few years did Qin Huaiyong feel that he really had a family. He had children, and he lived in a peaceful and happy family. How could he ignore his family? Chu Qing also had a family. It was not easy for him to climb to his current position and appear in front of everyone. How could he let everything go to waste? Chu Liuchen's meaning was very obvious. If they dared to disobey him again, they might be in trouble next, and it was not just a matter of such a letter. Qin Huaiyong gritted his teeth, lowered his head first, and bowed to the back of the screen, saying, "I will obey all your orders, Your Highness." Prince Chun could even rob the secret letters that he had sent out, and this place was far away from the emperor. Among the people traveling, most of them were Prince Chin. The emperor was afraid that something would happen to Prince Chin, so he sent many guards to follow him. From this point of view, if something happened to Chu Liuchen, neither of them would survive. On the other hand, if something happened to the two of them, as long as Chu Liuchen was fine, it would not be a big deal. From these 2 points alone, he and Chu Qing were at a disadvantage. Even if Prince Chen secretly attacked him and Chu Qing on the way, as long as he was fine, the emperor would not investigate anything. After thinking about this, Qin Huaiyong immediately lowered his head. He still had to take care of his family. Chu Qing also thought of this. Although he was not convinced, he had to be convinced when he saw Qin Huaiyong lower his head. He gritted his teeth, swallowed the humiliation in his heart, and said, "I will obey all your orders, Your Highness." But they were both the sons of the former emperor. Why was Chu Liuchen valued and doted on by the emperor so much that he was even more trusted than his own sons when he was living such a poor life? Was it because he was not the legitimate son of the former emperor? However, the former emperor had passed away. It did not matter whether he was the legitimate son or not. There was no throne to inherit. It could even be said that without the former emperor he, as son of a concubine, should not be valued more than the legitimate son. After all, the throne was farther away from him. Why did the emperor favor Chu Liuchen instead of him? Chu Qing's heart was full of unwillingness, but no matter how unwilling he was, he had to lower his head. Xiao Xuanzi walked out of the room with a smile and said, "General Qin, Commander Prince Qing, our prince is not feeling well and needs to take a rest first. Please." As he spoke, he reached out to the side and bowed to them with a smile, looking very respectful. But no matter how respectful he was, he still asked them to leave. When they retreated to the gate of the courtyard, Xiao Xuanzi turned around and left with a smile. "Ningyuan Army General." Chu Qing stopped Qin Huaiyong, who was about to leave. "What's the matter, Commander Prince Qin?" Qin Huaiyong's expression looked normal. He looked at Chu Qing and asked coldly, "Ningyuan Army General wrote a memorial to the emperor? Did he send it to the capital city?" Chu Qing gritted his teeth and couldn't help asking. He saw that Qin Huaiyong's face was not very good just now, so he suspected that Qin Huaiyong was the same as him. There was more than one letter on the table just now. "Don't you think it has nothing to do with you, Commander Prince Qin?" Qin Huaiyong was also full of anger. Just now, he could not lose his temper inside. At this time, his face was not good. In front of Prince Chen, he could do nothing but be weak. Could it be that Commandery Prince Qing also wanted to suppress him now? Ningyuan Army General, you misunderstood. Since it's a misunderstanding, it's my fault. I still have something to do, so I can't accompany you, Commandery Prince Qing. Qin Huaiyong impatiently cupped his hands to him and directly interrupted him. Then he turned around and strode away, ignoring Chu Qing and leaving him here. Chu Qing was so angry that his face was almost twisted. There was rage in his eyes, but he could not let it out. He took a deep breath and told himself that it was not appropriate here. This was Chu Liuchen's door, and he could not lose his temper with Qin Huaiyong in front of Chu Liuchen's door. At the moment he was just a prince with an idle post. This trip to the Su country was quite important. If he could not bear it, his great plan would be ruined. He still needed to rely on this opportunity to formally establish himself in the imperial court and no longer deal with some useless things all day long. He gritted his teeth, turned around with difficulty, and went back the way he came. He could not do anything to Chu Liuchen, but he could do nothing to Qin Huaiyong. Now he could not rush it, so he had to take it slow. When he went to the Su country as an envoy, he and Qin Huaiyong would be much more at ease without Chu Liuchen's watchful eyes, and he could also play some tricks. Now he had better not act rashly. It had to be said that Qin Huaiyong and Chu Qing's ideas were very similar. This time, Chu Liuchen made them see the gap between them and Chu Qing, which also made them afraid. They did not dare to play tricks on Chu Liuchen and planned to play tricks on him. In the capital city, when it was just nightfall, Prince Chen's mansion received the Empress Dowager's edict from the side door, asking Xiao Wenru to go to the palace the next day if she was fine. This edict was specially sent from the palace when it was almost nightfall. It seemed that someone had said something in front of the Empress Dowager. Xiao Wenru had thought that it would be tomorrow morning at the earliest. When Infanta Yun then went to the palace to meet the Empress Dowager and talked about this matter, the Empress Dowager would summon her. Today, the edict came first, but she was not summoned to the palace immediately. It seemed that the Empress Dowager was taking care of her. It seemed that Chu Liuchen was the only one who had this ability and took care of her. She could not help but feel sweet in her heart. Even if he was thousands of miles away, he would pay attention to her so quickly. Her watery eyes almost glowed with soft tears, which became gentler under the lamp. After traveling for so many days, she wondered if he was in good health. Although he knew that there was nothing wrong with his body now, he still had to pay more attention to his body when he was outside. She walked to the lamp, picked up the brush pen, and began to write a letter home, with a gentle look in her eyes. Yujia came in with a cup of tea and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Only when her master thought about Prince Chen would she be so gentle and elegant and smile so shyly like a teenage girl. She was no longer cold and deep like a woman who had experienced many hardships and seen through the mortal world. What's the matter? Xiao Wenru put down the brush pen and read it again before asking. Nanny Zheng, she said, she has something important to tell you. Yu Jie said. Chapter 10:10. Why doesn't Nanny Zheng come in by herself? Xiao Wenru raised her eyes and asked in surprise. She also brought a person here and said that she came from the Imperial Palace. Yu Jie said in a low voice. Xiao Wenru frowned and put down the letter. The faint blush on her face slowly faded and she asked, From the Imperial Palace? She came from the side door over there. I heard that she was picked up by Nanny Zheng. The old maid guarding at the door sent someone to inform Nanny Zheng, and Nanny Zheng came here to pick her up. Yu Jie explained in detail. Just now, Nanny Zheng had told her clearly about it. She came from the Imperial Palace, but now she came here at this time and asked Nanny Zheng to pick her up, which was very sneaky. It didn't seem that she was sent by the Empress Dowager and the Empress. However, except for the two of them, Xiao Wenru really didn't know who else in the Imperial Palace would send someone to look for her. All the womenfolk in the Imperial Palace were not familiar with her, and they had never contacted each other in private. Could it be Xiao Yenru? She shook her head secretly and thought that it was impossible. It didn't mean that it was impossible for Xiao Yenru to come to look for her. With Xiao Yanru's character, if there was a possibility for her to help her, she would definitely find a way to look for her. However, she was not powerful in the Imperial Palace now, so it was impossible for her to send someone to look for her at this time, let alone ask Nanny Zheng, who was not familiar with Nanny Zheng. Was she an acquaintance of Nanny Zheng? With an idea in mind, she walked to the chair and sat down. Invite Nanny Zheng in. Yes. Yu Jie bowed sideways and left. When she reached the door, she gestured to Nanny Zheng, who was standing outside the door. Nanny Zheng nodded to a palace maid standing beside her and entered the door first. The palace maid followed her into the room. The light in the room was not dazzling, but it was not dim either. Xiao Wanru sat in the light, elegant and charming. She seemed to be about to fall asleep. Her beautiful hair had fallen down and casually draped over her shoulders, making her look more petite. She was just a girl who had not reached the age of 15. Nanny Zheng sighed in her heart, but now she had to stand at the gate of Prince Chen's mansion. Greetings, Your Highness. Nanny Zheng took 2 steps forward and said respectfully. Xiao Wanru raised her head gently and said, Nanny Zheng, you are too polite. What can I do for you to see me at this time? As she spoke, her eyes fell on the palace maid who came in with Nanny Zheng. She was indeed a palace maid. She was dressed in a palace dress, but her face was covered with a veil, only revealing a pair of eyes. She looked very mysterious. At this time, she also bowed to Xiao Wanru respectfully. Yu Jie followed them in, but she stayed at the door and did not go forward. Princess, please punish me. Nanny Zheng moved her lips as if she wanted to say something, but she suddenly knelt down and choked with sobs. Xiao Wanru widened her beautiful eyes in surprise and asked in astonishment, Nanny Zheng, what are you doing? Just say it. Your Highness, it's me who hid my identity. I used to work for Concubine Lan in the Imperial Palace. Nanny Zheng didn't get up but just said, Concubine Lan? Xiao Wanru thought of the concubine whom she had only met once. Even though she only met her once, she still remembered her beauty very clearly. She stood up, walked up to Nanny Zheng, helped her up and said softly, You were driven out of the Imperial Palace. It really doesn't matter who you work for. Since you have left the Imperial Palace and I have taken you in, you are mine. It doesn't matter who you worked for before. Xiao Wanru had known something about Nanny Zheng for a long time. She knew that Nanny Zheng was driven out of the Imperial Palace because she had offended someone. She knew that Nanny Zheng couldn't find a good family to educate her miss, so she ended up in the Qin's mansion. However, these were all in the past, and Xiao Wanru didn't want to care about it. It was enough for Nanny Zheng to work for her wholeheartedly now. Your Highness, I know that you are magnanimous, but it's my fault that I didn't explain it to you in person. Nanny Zheng was moved and gratified. She wiped away her tears, raised her head and said firmly, Your Highness, I used to work for Concubine Lan, and I will work for you in the future. Your Highness, please believe me and Concubine Lan. There was no logic in her words. Xiao Wanru's watery eyes fell on the palace maid behind her again. It made sense to believe in Nanny Zheng. When Xiao Wanru used Nanny Zheng, she believed in her. However, it didn't make sense for her to believe in Concubine Lan. How could she come to such a conclusion? Concubine Lan had always been mysterious in the Imperial Palace, and it was said that she was the Emperor's favorite. But except for that, Xiao Wanru didn't think it had anything to do with her. When she entered the Imperial Palace the second day after her marriage, it was the only time she had seen Concubine Lan. After that, she hadn't seen Concubine Lan again. It was said that Concubine Lan used to be very favored, and then she became arrogant and offended the Emperor. The Emperor locked her up, and even the Empress was not allowed to go in. But on that day, Concubine Lan came and went freely and didn't seem to be locked up. Of course, these things had nothing to do with her. After thinking about it, she forgot it. If it weren't for Concubine Lan's outstanding appearance, Xiao Wanru couldn't even remember what Concubine Lan looked like. Now, why did Concubine Lan get involved with her? Nanny Zheng, is she Concubine Lan's maid? Xiao Wanru asked. Nanny Zheng stepped back and made way for the palace maid behind her. Your Highness, she is Concubine Lan's palace maid. The palace maid stepped forward, took off the veil covering her face, and bowed to Xiao Wanru very respectfully. Prince Qin, do you still remember me? Without the veil, the exposed face was indeed a little familiar. After thinking about it carefully, Xiao Wanru found that she was really the palace maid who followed concubine Lan that day. What's wrong with your concubine Lan? Xiao Wanru asked in confusion. She didn't think she had any special friendship with concubine Lan before. Our concubine Lan is fine, but I'm afraid that something is wrong with your highness. The palace maid said softly. Something is wrong with me? Xiao Wanru became more and more surprised. She really didn't think there was anything wrong with her, or in other words, she really didn't think there was anything wrong with her that could have anything to do with concubine Lan. I heard that something happened to Princess Qin today. Marquis Xing's mansion made a plot against your highness, and a man was involved in it, intending to ruin your highness's reputation? The palace maid asked. Xiao Wanru's face darkened. She looked the palace maid up and down a few times, and her eyes turned cold. Does this have something to do with concubine Lan? It's all related to concubine Lan, but concubine Lan is afraid that you will suffer losses in Prince Chen's mansion alone. Prince Chen is not in the capital city now, and I have no one to rely on. Concubine Lan means that if you think you can't solve it, I can help you solve it. What will happen to Prince Chen's mansion in the future? In the future, your highness can send Nanny Zheng to the Imperial Palace to find concubine Lan. Seeing that Xiao Wanru misunderstood, the palace maid hurriedly explained. What did the mysterious concubine Lan want to do? Xiao Wanru's extremely long eyelashes fluttered twice, and she was full of doubts in her heart. Why did concubine Lan, who had only met her once, take care of her so much? It sounded like there was no one in the mansion to support Chu Luchen when he was not here. She, as Princess Qin, was still young and not very sensible, so concubine Lan meant to help and take care of her at this time. When Chu Luchen left, he didn't mention that concubine Lan had such a good relationship with him, and she even vaguely heard his dislike before. Thank you for your kindness, concubine Lan, but I can't trouble you with these things. Xiao Wanru's heart was in turmoil, but she didn't show it on her face. She smiled slightly and said softly. Her expression was much gentler than before, and so did the expression on the face of the palace maid. She originally came to convey the kindness of concubine Lan, and it would not be good if Princess Chen misunderstood her. Your Highness, you are too polite. Concubine Lan and Princess Qin are very congenial. When we met in the Imperial Palace before, concubine Lan talked about Princess Qin the most when she came back. She said that Princess Qin was a good girl and that Prince Qin had suffered for so many years. Finally, someone really cared about him. The palace maid choked with sobs as she said this. Nanny Zheng also wiped away her tears on the side. However, Yu Jie and Xiao Wanru were confused. What were they talking about? Thank you, concubine Lan. If there is anything in the future, I will ask concubine Lan for help. Let's forget about it now. Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and said, Yes, it's all your highness's order. The palace maid said with red eyes and looked at Xiao Wanru with extremely gentle eyes. Xiao Wanru didn't see it clearly that day. Now she took a closer look and found that this palace maid was also an old chief palace maid, who seemed to be not much younger than Nanny Zheng. She should also be concubine Lan's trusted subordinate for a long time. So Nanny Zheng also used to be concubine Lan's trusted subordinate? I've delivered your message. If you need help in the future, you can send a message to me. Concubine Lan can go out. If you need help, concubine Lan will definitely do her best to help you. Please don't doubt it, Princess Qin. The palace maid bowed sideways again and said, I can't stay outside for too long. I have to go back to serve concubine Lan, so I'll go back first. Yu Jie, see her out for me. Xiao Wanru nodded and said. Yu Jie lifted the curtain. The palace maid wiped the corners of her eyes, tied the veil on her face, and turned to leave. Yu Jie followed her out, leaving only Nanny Zheng and Xiao Wanru in the room. Nanny Zheng, were you concubine Lan's trusted subordinate in the past? Xiao Wanru asked slowly. If she didn't ask about it in the past, it would have nothing to do with her. But now she was involved in an inexplicable relationship. Even though concubine Lan expressed her kindness, Xiao Wanru had to doubt it. This matter had come about too mysteriously. If Concubine Lan didn't get involved with Nanny Zheng, could it be Chu Luchen? The words of the palace maid beside Concubine Lan were really intriguing. Your Highness, I was indeed Concubine Lan's trusted subordinate in the past. Previously, the Empress implicated me in a matter, so Concubine Lan had to let me go out of the Imperial Palace. I didn't expect to meet you, Your Highness. It's really my luck and Concubine Lan's luck, Nanny Zheng said excitedly with tears in her eyes. Chapter 10-11. In the past, Nanny Zheng had always been very calm in front of others and had never lost her composure like this. But now she was so excited that she couldn't control herself. What's the relationship between Concubine Lan and Prince Qin? Xiao Wanru asked straightforwardly. Nanny Zheng opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. The princess's words were so direct that she couldn't answer for a while. Xiao Wanru calmly rolled her watery eyes and then asked, "Can't you tell me about their relationship?" Her words were very roundabout. She explained the relationship between the two of them without being aggressive. Nanny Zheng couldn't help nodding. After nodding, her face immediately changed and she looked at Xiao Wanru in horror. So, Concubine Lan really has a relationship with His Highness? Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and asked again. Nanny Zheng hesitated for a moment, nodded affirmatively, and pursed her lips hard. It was not her who said it, but the princess guessed it. She didn't say anything at the moment. Looking at Nanny Zheng's expression, Xiao Wanru smiled. It meant that Nanny Zheng couldn't say it, but she could ask. Does Concubine Lan mean Prince Qin? Xiao Wanru asked tentatively. Nanny Zheng was very anxious. She shook her head hard and looked at Xiao Wanru anxiously. She didn't know how the princess came up with such a conclusion, which was really terrible. After working for Xiao Wanru for a long time, Nanny Zheng certainly knew that the master she was working for was very extraordinary. Although she was a weak and slender woman, she was decisive and sometimes even fiercer than a man. She was also smart. The most important thing was that Prince Chen was very fond of Concubine Lan and she was the most important person in Prince Chen's heart. If the princess misunderstood Concubine Lan, it would be really bad. Xiao Wanru let out a sigh softly and asked slowly, "Does it mean that Concubine Lan is really kind to His Highness and won't hurt him?" The inexplicable Concubine Lan also put a lot of pressure on her. The Empress Dowager had just learned about what had happened just now, but Concubine Lan had already got a general idea of what had happened. If it were the Empress, Xiao Wanru wouldn't have any doubts. But Concubine Lan was an who had been locked up for so many years. It sounded like a place that was even worse than the Cold Palace. How could she know? Moreover, he reacted so quickly, which was not much less than when the Empress Dowager came over. This speed represented Concubine Lan's strength. It was definitely not what others saw or guessed. With such a person around, how could Xiao Wanru rest assured if he was malicious to Chu Luchen? Why does Concubine Lan treat Prince Qin so well? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and asked. She fixed her eyes on Nanny Zheng and paid attention to her every move. Nanny Zheng would definitely not answer this question, but Nanny Zheng could see something from it. As expected, Nanny Zheng nodded anxiously, shook her head, and then looked at Xiao Wanru anxiously, hoping that she could understand what she meant. Xiao Wanru's eyes became deep, and she looked at Nanny Zheng thoughtfully. Concubine Lan? She had never met Concubine Lan in her last life. Concubine Lan was a lofty figure and had nothing to do with a small painter like her. However, she felt that she could trust her. Could she really trust her? This feeling was very subtle, but she couldn't tell why. She only felt that there seemed to be something mysterious about it. She suppressed the doubts in her heart and said, "Can I ask Concubine Lan for help in the future?" She was not asking about the relationship between Concubine Lan and Chu Luchen. Nanny Zheng breathed a sigh of relief and answered in a hurry, "Yes, Your Highness, you can trust Concubine Lan. She will definitely help Prince Qin. As long as it's about Prince Chen's mansion, Concubine Lan will definitely protect Prince Qin and never let Prince Qin suffer losses." This matter had nothing to do with the topic that could not be talked about. Since Concubine Lan had sent someone here today, it meant this. She did not express her intention to make the princess misunderstand. Does Prince Chen know that concubine Lan is so protective of Prince Chen? Xiao Wanru asked tentatively. Nanny Zheng lowered her head and said with a bitter face, His Highness doesn't want concubine Lan to pay attention to him. What if the Empress wants to punish me? Will concubine Lan stand up for me? Xiao Wanru asked in another direction. Even if it's the Empress, concubine Lan will help you. Nanny Zheng nodded hard. For fear that Xiao Wanru didn't understand, she nodded a lot. Compared with the past, Nanny Zheng looked very excited today. There was doubt in the depths of her watery eyes, but she still looked calm and said, I see. Nanny Zheng, you can leave now. I have to go to the Imperial Palace tomorrow, so I have to trouble you to accompany me. This is what I should do. Nanny Zheng nodded and breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. The princess was still willing to use her, which meant that the princess was not angry about what she had done today. Xiao Wanru waved her hand. After bowing, Nanny Zheng retreated respectfully. When she retreated to the door, her eyes involuntarily turned red again. She muttered a few words to herself in a very low voice, but Yujia happened to come over quietly and heard some intermittent words. She originally wanted to say hello to Nanny Zheng, but Nanny Zheng looked very distracted. Without looking around, Nanny Zheng left in a hurry. Your Highness, I heard Nanny Zheng say at the door, God bless us, Bodhisattva bless us. And then she mumbled, but I didn't hear what she said clearly. After entering the door, Yujia first told Xiao Wanru about the palace maid and then mentioned Nanny Zheng. Yujia, what do you think of concubine Lan? Xiao Wanru asked thoughtfully. I think concubine Lan is good to Prince Chen's mansion. When I sent her away just now, the palace maid named Qin Mu also expressed her kindness to me. Yujia said, I don't think Prince Chen's mansion is of any use to concubine Lan. I've never heard that concubine Lan has a prince. Xiao Wanru nodded. She understood what Yujia meant. Since concubine Lan didn't have a prince, she was destined to have no other ideas and it was impossible for her to be against Prince Chen's mansion. Was she really showing kindness? But Xiao Wanru still didn't understand. There would be no unprovoked kindness in this world. There must be a reason, right? It was said that Chu Luchen and concubine Lan were fated to meet each other at first sight, but Chu Luchen and concubine Lan were not fated to meet each other. The affairs in the palace had always been mysterious, and no one could guess it. As for the matter of concubine Lan, it would be better to wait until Chu Luchen came back. What he needed to solve now was the matter of Marquis Xing's mansion. He needed to think carefully about how to talk to the Empress Dowager when he entered the Imperial Palace tomorrow regarding Xiao Jing's matter. Not only did Yanxi have to deal with it, but Qin Yuru also had to be watched closely. She had a feeling that Qin Yuru would definitely have some problems. Sighing. The next morning, after taking the medicine, Xiao Wanru got up. She had just vomited blood the day before. Although she had rested for a day, her complexion was still not very good. Her face, which used to be pink and tender, was now pale and delicate. She looked very delicate and weak. She was wearing a light blue dress paired with a lavender 8-sided skirt. There was a belt of the same color around her waist, which made her slender and graceful. There was only a pearl hairpin in her hair, and there was a bunch of fine pearls hanging down from it. It was beautiful, and there was a hint of splendor in it, which made her delicate little face even more attractive. Except for her face being too pale, her lips were too pale. She entered the palace from the side door, and there was already a palace sedan chair waiting there. Prince Chen, the Empress Dowager invites you to take the palace sedan chair, lest you get hurt. A eunuch in the Empress Dowager's palace came forward and saluted with a smile. Xiao Wanru nodded softly. Yujia came forward and gave him a pouch. She said cleverly, Thank you, eunuch. Our princess is indeed in poor health. Originally, she couldn't come here, but thinking that the Empress Dowager must be anxious, she forced herself to come here. Please take your time to carry the palace sedan chair later. The eunuch took the pouch with a smile. He reached out and pinched it. He immediately knew that it contained silver notes. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will definitely tell them to be careful. You are not in good health, but you forced yourself to come here. You can't get tired again. Nanny Zheng helped Xiao Wanru sit down in the palace sedan chair. Then she stepped aside with Yu Jie and followed the palace sedan chair inside. They walked extremely steadily and slowly all the way. The original time to arrive at the Palace of Benevolent and Peaceful was doubled. When they arrived at the Palace of Benevolent and Peaceful, a palace maid serving the Empress Dowager had been waiting there for a long time. Seeing Xiao Wanru come out of the palace sedan chair, she hurriedly came over to salute and then led her to the main hall. There were many people in the Palace of Benevolent and Peaceful today. The Empress Dowager was naturally sitting at the top. Beside her sat and Great Elder Princess on one side and Ruaping Great Elder Princess on the other. Beside Ruaping Great Elder Princess sat Infantiyun. Old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion was also there. Then there were several madams. They were all very familiar. They were the older madams of yesterday. As soon as Xiao Wanru came in, everyone's eyes fell on her. Seeing that her lips were much lighter than usual, and Great Elder Princess felt distressed and her eyes turned red. In the past, Xiao Wanru's most outstanding feature was her bright red lips, but now they were pale. Xiao Wanru bowed in the hall, and immediately a palace maid came over to hold her. The Empress Dowager kindly pointed to a chair beside and Great Elder Princess and said, "Sit down and talk first. It doesn't look good." "Thank you, Empress Dowager," Xiao Wanru said softly. She walked to and Great Elder Princess with the help of a palace maid. She wanted to salute again, but was pulled by and Great Elder Princess and sat down in front of the chair. "You look like this. Why are you still so polite? You went to Marquis Xing's mansion peacefully, but you look like this. Your horoscope is really not in line with Marquis Xing's mansion." After saying that, she glared at Old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion. Old Madam was also observing Xiao Wanru. She didn't take it seriously at first. Yesterday, when she left, Nanny Yu said that although Princess Chen's complexion was poor, it was not very bad. But what was going on now? Xiao Wanru's situation was very bad at first glance. It was obvious that she had forced herself to come here. Old Madam couldn't help feeling nervous. Chapter 10-12. Old Madam's eyes fell on Xiao Wanru's face coldly, trying to see if Xiao Wanru was pretending. Xiao Wanru looked up, met Old Madam's eyes, and then smiled. She was now in a higher position than Old Madam, and the Empress Dowager's Palace of Benevolent and Peaceful was not a place to talk about family etiquette. "Princess Chen, I heard that when you went to Marquis Xing's mansion to pay respects to your parents yesterday, Qiu Yu of the Ministry of Justice hid behind the offering table. When you entered the door, you smelled the smell of the handkerchief in Madame Zhang's hand. You lost control of your emotions a little. After you suppressed it, you hurt yourself?" Empress Dowager's face was very pale. Her most precious grandson had just left, and she had repeatedly said that she would help him take care of Princess Chen. It had only been a short time, and such a thing happened. The Empress Dowager was also full of anger at this time. Xiao Wanru raised her pale little face and replied softly, "Yesterday was indeed too coincidental. Maybe it's because I'm in poor health that I fainted again and again." He didn't blame anyone and only said that he was not in good health. The Empress Dowager nodded secretly and felt that this child was sensible, like Chen, who was lovable. "Since you are not in good health, don't go there these 2 days. You have observed mourning for your parents for 3 years and went to the Yuhui nunnery to mourn for them. It doesn't matter if you go there for 2 days. The Empress Dowager said. "That's not true. Yuan and also said that there is no need to go there anymore. Princess Chen also said that she would go there before. Princess Chen has been in the Yuhui nunnery for 3 years. In order to observe mourning for her parents, Marquis Xing's mansion has never held a religious ceremony for so many years. Let other people in Marquis Xing's mansion follow her to worship." Princess Yuan and followed the Empress Dowager's will and said. These words were also what the Empress Dowager liked to hear. The Empress Dowager nodded, but her face did not relax. She turned to look at Old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion with an unfriendly look. They hadn't held a religious ceremony for so many years. At this time, they held such a religious ceremony in order to lure Xiao Wanru over. Then something happened. If it weren't for Xiao Wanru's maid who was wearing a self-made heart-cleansing sachet, no one knew what would have happened next. As long as she thought of this, the Empress Dowager was so angry that her eyebrows twitched. If his grandson knew that something had happened to his daughter-in-law, he didn't know what would happen. He had taken a fancy to this daughter-in-law for 3 years. In the past 3 years, Chen had never been so cooperative in the treatment. Speaking of it, it should be this girl's advantage. For this reason, the Empress Dowager could not let anything happen to Xiao Wanru. Marquis Xing's mansion has not held religious rites for many years. What is it for this time? Empress Dowager asked, looking at the face of old Madame of Marquis Xing's mansion. Old Madame couldn't sit still anymore. She knelt down with a plop sound and said, "My daughter-in-law, Madame Jiang, came back and said that when she was meditating in the Yuhui nunnery, she dreamed of the eldest son and his wife, so she wanted to hold a religious ceremony in the mansion." The Empress Dowager also knew that when the eldest son died, the old duke happened to be ill, so she didn't dare to hold it openly. After so many years, I have never thought about it and dared not to do it. Speaking of this, old Madame thought of her eldest son and couldn't help covering her face and crying. At first, it was because of the old duke, but later, she didn't dare to do it. If Madame Jiang hadn't mentioned it and said that the eldest son in her dream said that he wanted to go back to the mansion to have a look, she wouldn't have held it. "Father appeared in my dream to second aunt." Xiao Wanru asked in surprise, "Why didn't he appear in my dream to me but to second aunt?" Xiao Wanru's second half of the sentence sounded like she was puzzled. She was talking to herself in a very low voice, but everyone's attention was on her now, so they heard it clearly. After thinking about it carefully, many people showed a somewhat strange expression on their faces. There had always been people appearing in their dreams, but they didn't entrust it to their biological daughter or their old mother, but to the younger sister-in-law of the second branch. The meaning behind it was really strange. Madame of Marquis Xing said that heir of Duke Xing appeared in her dream, and there was a smell of medicine on her handkerchief that could make people insane. Moreover, there were men at the religious ceremony. "Old Madame, is this Madame of Marquis Xing particularly powerful in your mansion? She can do whatever she wants in your mansion, and even old Madame can't suppress her?" Ruaping Great Elder Princess asked curiously. Considering all the factors, Madame Jiang was the most suspicious one. Madame Jiang herself is in trouble. Her behavior is a little abnormal. I don't know if she is also affected by the medicine. Old Madame stammered and defended herself. That's why such a thing happened in the Ministry of Justice, which involved Madame of Marquis Xing. Madame of Marquis Xing made a fuss about holding a religious ceremony and invited Princess Chen to come here. Princess Chen was almost killed. After that, she became insane and pushed her daughter-in-law, and the grandson she was pregnant with was also gone. Another old madam said, "She was also present yesterday and watched the whole thing. She felt disgusted with Jiang Shi from the bottom of her heart. She had given birth to a good child, but she had inexplicably lost it." The first grandma of Marquis Xing's mansion stood beside her cautiously. No one expected that Madame Jiang suddenly lost her temper, and she even lost her temper on the pregnant first grandma. Could it be that Madame Jiang made such a fuss in order to evade responsibility? Empress Dowager asked coldly. "When I took Hao there yesterday, Marquis Xing's mansion was in a mess, and there was no decent master in the Justice Department. I accompanied Hao to preside over the religious ceremony. It was not until very late in the evening that someone from Marquis Xing's mansion came to ask me to go back, but they said that they wanted to leave Hao alone. I refused. Princess Bai Kaichen just had an accident, and they intended to let Hao have an accident tonight." And Great Elder Princess said angrily. She had already known about Xiao Wanru's accident yesterday. She had originally come to see it, but she could not leave for a while, leaving Xiao Yuanhao alone in Marquis Xing's mansion. Great Elder Princess was really worried, so she had no choice but to send someone to Prince Chen's mansion to ask about Xiao Wanru's situation. After knowing that Xiao Wanru was fine, she was relieved to accompany Xiao Yuanhao. Speaking of this, Great Elder Princess was also full of anger. She said that she could find a solution for her daughter and son-in-law, But she did not even have a master and let the monks and Taoist priests make noise there. Yesterday, something happened to my granddaughter-in-law, so I went to guard her. Madame Jiang looked a little abnormal, so I did not dare to let her stay. The situation was very critical, and the people in the mansion were all panicked, so they did not take care of the religious ceremony for a while. Old Madame lowered her head and said with grievance, "So the son who is alive is good." And Great Elder Princess said casually. Xiao Wanru clenched her fists hard in her sleeves and then slowly put them down. And Great Elder Princess's words hit the nail on the head. The son who was alive was good. Xiao Jing was the son Old Madame cared about, and her father was the one who was abandoned. A trace of coldness flashed in her eyes. In this case, why did she pretend to be a mother and a filial son? It was so disgusting. Empress Dowager, let fathers do the religious ceremony in Prince Chen's mansion. Xiao Wanru sighed and said, "How can we do that?" Old Madame was shocked and hurriedly stopped her. If the religious ceremony of the former heir of Duke Xing was moved to her son-in-law's mansion halfway, how would people think of Marquis Xing's mansion? The face of Marquis's mansion would be lost. Why not? In my opinion, all these things are caused by Madame Jiang. The case of the Ministry of Justice should be true. Before Princess Chen returned to her family, she wanted to bite Princess Chen to death like crazy. When Princess Chen returned to her family, she wanted to make such a thing to frame Princess Chen. It was the same yesterday. Is she going to destroy Princess Chen? And Great Elder Princess said slowly. As an outsider, she had no burden to say this at all. And Great Elder Princess glanced at and Great Elder Princess, and the smile on her face became much more amiable. No matter what would happen in the future, at least at this time, and Great Elder Princess was on Xiao Wanru's side. The case of the Ministry of Justice doesn't need to be retried. With what happened yesterday, it must be true. Old Madam, do you still listen to Madame Jiang? Another old madam asked. She was also on Xiao Wanru's side. Were they all siding with him? Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes and glanced at everyone's faces calmly. At last, her eyes fell on the Empress Dowager's face. There was obvious anger on the Empress Dowager's face. Xiao Wanru could tell that she was really angry. With a thought, she understood the reason. Although she played a part of the reason, the most important thing was the Empress Dowager's attitude. The Empress Dowager's attitude was so obvious that no one dared to go against her. Empress Dowager, it's not that I want to protect her. It's just that she is mentally abnormal. Old Madame kowtowed heavily 3 times and said with tears, I didn't find it before. After the incident yesterday, Madame Jiang looked very abnormal. I asked the old maid who served her and she said that Madame Jiang has been like this recently. Sometimes she wants to be sober, sometimes she is confused, and sometimes she even fights. Abnormal? Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice to hide the trace of sarcasm in her eyes. This was really a good reason. Was Madame Jiang crazy? Is Madame Marquis Xing crazy? Infantine asked in surprise and looked at old Madame in disbelief with her eyes wide open. She was fine when she left yesterday. Your Highness, didn't you find her behavior wrong yesterday? Old Madame asked. Infanta Yuan and froze for a moment and didn't know whether to believe it or not. There was a period of time yesterday when Madame Jiang really seemed to be crazy. She spoke incoherently and kept asking Qiuyu if he had seen Xiao Wanru's maid bullying her. Her words were really weird. Later, Qiuyu also said that he didn't see what she said. Madame Jiang behaved strangely yesterday. After that, I asked someone to check her and it was said that she had sputum syndrome, Old Madame said. The so-called sputum syndrome meant that Madame Jiang was confused and mentally abnormal. Xiao Wanru reached out to hold and Great Elder Princess's hand and gently pinched it in her sleeve, secretly indicating that since Old Madame said so, she should just take it as it was. Empress Dowager, ask someone to make a diagnosis. If it is not sputum syndrome, Madame Jiang must go to the Ministry of Justice to make it clear. She should not find an excuse to find Princess Chen. No matter whether she wants to harm her or make her compromise, it is against the national law. And Great Elder Princess understood and said, Chapter 1013. Empress Dowager. Old Madam glared at and Great Elder Princess angrily, and her eyes almost spurted fire. That's good. An old madam sitting beside her said. That's true. Empress Dowager, let's deal with it in this way. As for what happened yesterday, let the Ministry of Justice investigate it clearly. Which family with great achievements can hide so casually to investigate a case? Even the head of the family doesn't know about it. It's not a big deal to offend the head of the family. If there are other things involved, it will be a big deal. And Great Elder Princess also nodded. Her words made other madams agree. This kind of thing might happen again. Next time, it might be their turn. If it was for that kind of political event, it was reasonable for them to hide and solve the case. But why did they use this kind of means to deal with this kind of family matter? Everyone's mansion had something to do. If the staff of the Ministry of Justice handled the case in this way, they would find out everything. This absolutely couldn't. This kind of thing, I've never heard of it. The Ministry of Justice should really blame themselves. If the matter of the family is reported to the court, we can just investigate it. There is no need to do such a despicable act and hide secretly. Moreover, there may be other mysteries in it. If Princess Qin used the medicine at that time and didn't forcefully control it, who knows what would have happened? Yes, that's the reason. Several madams were talking about it. Old Madam's words had long been covered by others' words, and the Empress Dowager didn't hear it at all. Only Xiao Wanru, who had been paying attention to Old Madam, heard a little. She squinted at Old Madam with a trace of sarcasm in her eyes. At this time, Old Madam still wanted to protect Madame Jiang. It could be said that she had deep affection for her mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Send an imperial physician to Marquis Xing's mansion to check Madame Jiang's condition. If her condition is stable, the trip to the Ministry of Justice must be successful. The Empress Dowager made the decision. Old Madam shook her body and almost fainted. It was so shameful that Madame of Marquis Xing was really going to be tried in front of the Ministry of Justice. If Madame Jiang was smart, she would do as she said. Help Old Madam up. The ground is so cold. The Empress Dowager said lightly. 2 palace maids came over and helped Madame Dowager up. She still sat on the chair on the side and then retreated to the side. Empress Dowager, let Marquis Xing deal with his affairs by himself. You don't have to worry too much. Your birthday is coming soon, and you should be happier at this time. Ruaping Great Elder Princess said with a smile and changed the unpleasant topic. Yuan, and has already prepared the Empress Dowager's birthday gift. Infanta Yuan, and immediately joined in the fun. This pair of grandfather and grandson also cooperated very well. In just 2 sentences, they swept away the depressing atmosphere just now. Xiao Wanru calmly glanced at Infanta Yuan, who was smiling. She heard that Infanta Yuan and was also a favorite of the Empress Dowager. Now it seemed that it was true. Princess Yuan and was very clever in front of the Empress Dowager. I'm afraid it's too late for Qin to return to the capital this time. Empress Dowager sighed and thought of her grandson. Prince Qin is the most filial one. Even if he can't return to the capital city in time, he must have prepared the gift long ago. Infanta Yuan teased. Her words made the Empress Dowager laugh. Qin did send the gift to me early, but he has gone so far this time, so I'm really worried. I think it's better for him to come back early. After saying that, the Empress Dowager frowned slightly and looked worried. Infanta Yuan rolled her eyes and said with an increasingly gentle smile, Don't worry, Empress Dowager. Prince Qin just sent the envoy to the border, so he naturally won't go there. Even if something happens, he will be very safe. Chu Luqian sent the envoy to the border and then sent the troops to the border, so he didn't need to take risks personally. That being said, I always feel worried. Qin is not in good health. I'm always worried about him after he has gone so far this time. The Empress Dowager sighed. As long as she thought of her grandson running such a long distance and staying in such a dangerous place, the Empress Dowager couldn't eat or sleep well these days, for fear that something would happen if she was not careful. Imperial Grandmother, don't worry. If Prince Qin knows that you are so worried, I'm afraid that he will also miss you, Xiao Wanru said softly. Empress Dowager, Prince Chen has always been filial. You are so worried about him that you don't even care about your birthday. How can he rest assured? And Great Elder Princess also tried to persuade her. Now we can only think in this way. I hope he will come back soon. I can tell that Su country is not a good place. Su country was too far away, so the Empress Dowager had only heard of it. She felt that everything about Su country was very strange. The Emperor had implicitly mentioned some things that had happened before to the Empress Dowager, saying that it was related to Su country. Empress Dowager, I heard that some of the remnants of the previous dynasty escaped to Su country. I wonder if it is true? A madam suddenly thought of this matter and asked. They all said so. They also said that more than a decade ago, although those who rebelled were killed, there were still some who escaped, another madam said. Xiao Wanru didn't answer, but her eyes flickered slightly and she focused her attention. What happened more than a decade ago, which was the time when her father died, was what she was most concerned about now. Although these madams didn't know anything, they might be able to get some unexpected revelations from their words. I also heard so. It seems that some people escaped to Su country at that time, and there were people in Su country who helped them. Otherwise, they couldn't have been found as soon as they entered. And Great Elder Princess said. Really? Then the trip to Su country. A madam covered her mouth with a handkerchief in surprise and said, if it was true, the trip to Su country would not be so easy to solve. Prince Chen didn't go there as an envoy and just stayed at the border. With so many troops at the border, Su country didn't dare to do anything. And heard that Su country seemed to want to make friends with us, so they sent their princess to us. Infanta Yuan said with a smile. The princess of Su country? It is said that the mountains and rivers in that place are dangerous. I'm afraid that the so-called princess is not so good, another madam said disdainfully. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. The princess of Su country? She held the handkerchief tightly. It seemed to be a little familiar, but she couldn't remember it. Could it be that there was such a scene in her memory but it disappeared in the end? Why didn't she feel surprised when she heard it for the first time? Is it true that the princess of Su country is going to marry Su country? Yuan doesn't know. I heard that Su country has a princess who admires the beauty of our country. Our celestial empire's Fenghua wants to come over. As for the details, I really don't know. Maybe it's just hearsay. It was Yuan who heard it when he was out one day. Princess Yuan then lowered her head shyly and apologized to the Empress Dowager. Please forgive me, Your Highness. I told you what I heard on the grapevine. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. You also said the same thing. Empress Dowager comforted her gently and then asked with concern, did all passers-by say the same thing? Not all. When Yuan was traveling that day, someone happened to say the same thing. Later, I tried to find these two people, but I couldn't find them. Infanta Yuan said in confusion, I wanted to ask them where they heard it, but in the blink of an eye, these two people disappeared. After that, I didn't take it seriously, so I just said it casually. Therefore, there was no shadow or root of this matter. Even if they wanted to investigate it, they couldn't find Infanta Yuan. It was what she heard. Infanta Yuan was indeed not simple. Xiao Wanru picked up the teacup at hand, took a sip, and slowly put it down. She calmed herself down and continued to listen to Infanta Yuan and Empress Dowager. If it was really groundless, would Infanta Yuan really bring it to Empress Dowager? Of course not. Infanta Yuan was not so easy to deal with. Judging from how she tried her best to help her in the past 2 days, Xiao Wanru knew that she was a tolerant person. Except for the fight with her that day, Infanta Yuan had been very calm the rest of the time. If it was true, Chu Luchen, who was at the border, would be in trouble. Xiao Wanru bit her cherry lips, swallowed the palpitation in her heart, and continued to listen to them quietly. So what if she's married to a princess? She's just a princess from a barren land of a small country. Don't tell me she wants to marry a prince. A madam curled her lips in disdain and looked down on the so-called princess of the Su country. Among the 4 princes, 3 of them were either married or had arranged a wedding date. In fact, only Prince Exine was left. However, Prince Exine would definitely not be willing to marry a barren princess. The madams all thought that even if there was a princess from the Su Kingdom who wanted to marry into the Su Kingdom, it was impossible. Is Commandery Prince Qing married? A madam suddenly asked. No, but I heard that he is also engaged. Another madam answered hesitantly. Commandery Prince Qing is engaged, and it was his own mother who made the engagement for him long ago. He comes from a humble family. Seeing everyone looking at her, Empress Dowager said lightly. He comes from a humble family, and the Empress Dowager doesn't take it seriously. It seems that the Empress Dowager doesn't like him? These madams were all smart and immediately understood. However, after thinking about it, they found it reasonable. The other princes were all married by the Empress Dowager, and only this one was not famous. Judging from the Empress Dowager's expression, it seemed that she had never met her. The marriage of the members of the royal family was basically decided by the emperor or the Empress Dowager. This one was just a concubine who had been locked up, but she dared to make the decision for Commandery Prince Qing and make the engagement for his wife. No one knew who gave her face. Empress Dowager, bad news. Madame of Marquis Xing committed suicide by hitting the pillar. A palace maid ran in a hurry and said while gasping. Old Madame, who was sitting in the chair, widened her eyes and then fell down silently. Before she could say a word. Chapter 10:14. Has she been saved? An great elder princess suddenly stood up and asked anxiously. No matter what Madame of Jiang did, she was still Xiao Wanru's elder. It was not good for her to bear the reputation of hounding an elder to death. Fortunately, she is fine. But now she is in a coma. The imperial physician is trying his best to save her, the palace maid replied. An great elder princess breathed a sigh of relief and sat down. Xiao Wanru reached out to hold Ru, and great elder princess's hand and gently pinched her cold fingers to comfort her. She had already guessed that Madame of Jiang would make such a scene. With Madame of Jiang's identity, it was impossible for her to go to court. At that time, it would not only Madame of Jiang's face, but also the face of the whole Marquis Xing's mansion. Not to mention whether Madame of Jiang was willing or not, old Madame was definitely unwilling. Old Madame had always cared about the reputation of Marquis Xing's mansion very much, so how could she allow Madame of Jiang to ruin it? When she was in Marquis Xing's mansion yesterday, everything was connected, and it was actually very easy to understand. After coming out of Yuhui nunnery this time, Madame of Jiang knew that this matter could not be settled peacefully. If she did not let go, she would not be able to recover, so she tried every means to let her go back to Marquis Xing's mansion. No matter what happened, she was forced to release Madame of Jiang. In order to achieve this goal, she would definitely do anything. Madame of Jiang thought of making use of Qiuyu, who came to investigate the case, and she might have proposed some other things. She must have committed suicide as the last resort. Only by telling her the last resort could old Madame help her at all costs. Then there was the saying that she would perform the ritual for her parents. If old Madame had not manipulated behind the scenes, Madame of Jiang would not have been able to do it now. Zhao Shiran should have intervened in the accident yesterday. The medicine should have been secretly administered by Zhao Shiran, and the handkerchief should have been given to Madame of Jiang by Zhao Shiran. At first, Madame of Jiang was normal, but she became abnormal after Zhao Shiran came. Zhao Shiran's purpose should be to make people think that Madame of Jiang was mentally abnormal, so he administered the medicine. How could a normal person care about what he said and what he did? Zhao Shiran just wanted to temporarily solve Madame of Jiang's problem. However, in Madame Jiang's eyes, it was Zhao Shiran who had schemed against her. When the imperial physician found out about this, Madame Jiang then beat Zhao Shiran. Madame Dowager should have told the Madame of Duke Xing before she entered the palace today. If the Madame of Duke Xing insisted on investigating her responsibility, the Madame of Duke Xing had only one way to go: atone for his sins with death. However, based on Madame Jiang's character, she was not the kind of person who would really die just like that. It would be best if she did not die from the collision. Compared with Br and Great Elder Princess, Xiao Wanru knew the Jiang family better, so she was not worried about the Jiang family. Old Madam had been helped to rest in the side hall. The Empress Dowager frowned. The current situation of the Madam of Jiang was really difficult to deal with. She couldn't go to court, and it was not certain whether she could keep her life. What does Princess Chen think? The Empress Dowager turned to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru couldn't bear the reputation of hounding an elder to death, and she couldn't bear the reputation of hounding an official's wife to death either. I will listen to Empress Dowager's instructions. Xiao Wanru stood up, bowed sideways, and said, at this time, the Empress Dowager would definitely make some concessions, which she had thought about long ago. Although the Jiang family's life would not be endangered, the situation should be very urgent. However, even if she didn't go to court this time, so what? Even if she didn't go to court this time, so what? Zhao Xiran's child was gone, and it was Madame Jiang who pushed him away. From this point alone, Madame Jiang would not have an easy time in the future. The whole Marquis Xing's mansion would not have an easy life. This was much better than directly convicting the Jiang family and renouncing the Jiang family from Marquis Xing's mansion. It was more painful to kill people with a blunt knife. In the last life, she was worn down by them again and again, and stepped into a deeper swamp and struggled in pain again and again. Xiao Wanru's behavior was decent. She was neither annoyed nor angry. She was calm and gentle, which inexplicably made people feel at ease. The Empress Dowager reached out to pull her over and sighed. Good girl, I know you have been wronged. Don't worry. Even if I let the Jiang family go this time, I will not let her harm you in the name of righteousness again. Imperial Grandmother. Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and looked at the Empress Dowager with red eyes full of admiration. She was young and sometimes looked a little childish. She pretended to be generous, which made her look like a child pretending to be an adult. Thinking of the behavior of Marquis Xing's mansion, the Empress Dowager felt more and more pity for her. This child was indeed pitiful. No wonder her grandson cared about her. Who wouldn't feel sorry for such a pitiful and sensible girl? Of course, this was what the Empress Dowager thought in her heart. If Chu Luchen knew it, he would probably laugh at her. Pitiful and sensible? Was she really talking about Xiao Wanru? This little girl was ruthless and decisive when they first met. If she had been sensible, she would not have overturned the bridal sedan chair on the spot. Of course, Chu Luchen felt that this was what he appreciated most. If he liked her, he liked her. If he didn't like her, he didn't like her. Why should she wrong herself for the so-called hypocritical consideration? Madame Jiang has a bad character and evil intentions. She is mentally abnormal. She can't be the legal wife and should be demoted to a concubine, the Empress Dowager said coldly. Demoting a wife to a concubine would basically not happen. If any family demoted a wife to a concubine, they would be criticized by others. The accusation of spoiling a concubine and neglecting a wife would even damage their official career. But now the demotion of a wife to a concubine was proposed by the Empress Dowager, so no one dared to gossip. Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth silently. No matter in the last life or this life, Madame Jiang had wholeheartedly wanted to kill the first branch and destroy their roots. Her goal was the title and the glory. Now the title and the glory were still there, but they had nothing to do with her. He didn't know how crazy she would be after she woke up. Was she mentally abnormal? Then she could continue to be abnormal in the backyard of Marquis Xing's mansion. In the past, Madame Jiang and Xiao Jing's interests were the same, but now she was no longer a concubine. Could she continue to control Marquis Xing's mansion? Madame Jiang had been scheming all her life, but now she ended up like this. She had brought this upon herself. Moreover, the cause and effect between her and Zhao Xiran had just begun. Zhao Xiran was not her in the last life. Of course, Zhao Xiran's interests were the same as Madame Jiang's now, but Xiao Jing was not. Marquis Xing's mansion was really in chaos. That was good. Some of the past events would be turned over more and more, and it would become more and more obvious. Imperial grandmother, second uncle, is actually not wrong. Third aunt is not in good health. If Madame Jiang is demoted, there will be no one to take care of the backyard for second uncle. This is not very good. I hope Imperial grandmother can forgive Madame Jiang. Xiao Wenru knelt down, put her hands on the Empress Dowager's knees, and pleaded. Since it has become like this, why are you still begging for mercy? Although your second uncle is not wrong, he may not have done anything. Did he teach his wife in bed? Now that he is demoted as a concubine, we should pay more attention to him and let him get married as soon as possible. And great elder princess sighed and said, You are so kind. Let Marquis Xing marry a noble girl from a famous family. The Empress Dowager made a conclusion. Demote me as a concubine? Madame Jiang sat at the head of the bed. In the dim light, there was a bit of gloominess and madness in her eyes. When she fainted, she was in the main courtyard where she had lived before. When she woke up, she was in such a simple room. There was no one else around her, except for an old maid, who she had brought down from the Yuhui nunnery. That's true. An imperial edict came from the palace, so Marquis asked someone to move you here. You will be concubine Jiang from now on. The old maid sat on the round stool in front of her, looking full of displeasure. If I had known that concubine Jiang was so useless, I would not have come to you at that time. I even said that there would be nothing serious this time. It is an opportunity. Now tell me, concubine Jiang, what is this opportunity? Madame Jiang's face turned livid when she was asked, but she couldn't say a word. After a long while, she gritted her teeth and said, Go and ask the first young master to come here. At present, in this mansion, only her son was the closest to her. First young master? Concubine Jiang, have you forgotten that the first young master is now accompanying first grandma? Concubine Jiang pushed first grandma's child away, which is also the first young master's child. Have you forgotten that? The old maid sneered. Madame Jiang pushed first grandma Xiao like crazy, causing first grandma Xiao to miscarry. At this time, she was still looking for a son. We can still have children in the future. What are you afraid of? Zhao Shiran is not a good person. She even plotted against me. So what if I slapped her? She didn't stand still and fell, but she blamed me. Madame Jiang said angrily and slapped the cold and hard quilt hard. This quilt was not comparable to the one she used before. It was not only cold and hard, but also torn in several places. How could a person like her use such a quilt? It must be the negligence of the servants in the mansion. When she was in charge of the family, no servant dared to be negligent in front of her. Now they dared to step on her head. Madam, if you think so, then I have nothing to say. To tell you the truth, I heard that there used to be an old concubine living here. After the old concubine died, this place became empty. I heard from the people in your mansion that she died a violent death, so no one has lived here. Now it is left to you. I guess they are not afraid that you will die a violent death. There are people watching outside the courtyard, so you can't leave if you want. The old maid said grumpily. She had thought that she could enjoy a few days of happiness with Madame Jiang, but she didn't expect that her life was worse than before. If she had known this, she would have preferred to stay in the Yuhui nunnery. At least, she would be free, and Marquis Xing's mansion would send her money to live. The old concubine who died in the past died of violent death? Madame Jiang thought for a while and immediately understood who it was. It was an old concubine of the old marquis, who had hanged herself. It was said that she was hung on the beam of the main room at that time, and was still hanging swaying when the servants came. As he thought of this, he couldn't help but look at the beam in the middle. A yellowish ribbon was actually hanging on the beam. When the wind blew, it swayed, and under the shadow of the lantern, it looked like layers upon layers of ghostly shadows. Chapter 10:15. Madame Jiang was so scared that her face changed dramatically. She pulled up the quilt and covered her head, shouting, "Take away the tape, take it away." Concubine Jiang, don't shout. I'm not tall, so I can't reach it. I'm old, so I don't dare to climb up. Just stay here. If you're hungry, you can eat some of the food on the table. If you don't like it, you can stay hungry. This is all the food sent by your mansion. If you don't eat it, I'll eat it all. The food on the table was even worse than that of the slightly decent servants in Marquis Xing's mansion. It was so simple that it was not what Madame of Marquis Xing should have. Of course, Madame Jiang was no longer Madame of Marquis Xing, but just concubine Jiang, a concubine who had fallen from power. A concubine who has fallen from power? Zhao Shiran was sitting at the head of the bed with the same haggard look. Compared with Madame of Jiang, she looked more gentle and made people feel sorry for her. At this time, hearing the words of the old maid beside her, she raised her head in surprise, looked at her husband sitting by the bed with red eyes, and said in a soft cry, "Husband, how can you do this? She is my mother. She has hurt you like this, but you still forgive her." Xiao Hua-in said angrily. How could he not be angry? The child in Zhao Shiran's belly had come at the right time. His father had told him that if the child was a legitimate son, he would have more reasons to submit the memorial. He could secretly manipulate it to get the position of heir of the duke. Mother is not good, but she is your mother. For your sake, I still have to be filial to her. Zhao Shiran burst into tears. She had really lost a biological child. How could she not feel pain in her heart? Tears fell down one by one, and her hand touched her belly. There was a child in her belly, her child. She had known that she was pregnant before, but she didn't say it. She didn't expect that Madame Jiang would do such a thing. Seeing her crying, Xiao Huan felt pain in his heart. She was also his child. He held Zhao Shiran in his arms and gently patted her slim body. He comforted her. The Imperial physician said that we are still young and will be fine. Take good care of yourself and don't worry about other things. We will have a child soon. But even if there's another one, it's not this child, it's not him. Zhao Shiran cried uncontrollably and said in a hoarse voice. If she could, she would cut the Jiang family into 1,000 pieces. But she couldn't. She couldn't, at least not now. I know. Xiao Huan hugged her tightly and said softly. After a long while, Zhao Shiran finally stopped crying. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he raised his head and asked, "What should we do now, mother? What else can we do? It's the Empress Dowager's decree. What can we do?" Xiao Huan was also full of anger when he mentioned the Jiang family. In the past, he always thought that his mother was very smart and would not do anything wrong. Whether it was in managing the family or in terms of attitude towards his father, she could be said to be a model. Now it seemed that he was wrong. Such a mother was not only shameful, but also lost the title of legal wife. Which legal wife would fall from the position of legal wife and become a concubine, a lowly concubine. The most important thing was that if his biological mother was a concubine, what would he be? The eldest son of a concubine? If he was just the eldest son of a concubine, where would he be? Where would he have the confidence to compete for the position of the heir of Marquis Xing's mansion? For so many years, he had not competed for it, as if he had never cared about the title of nobility. But in fact, how could he not compete for it? He was just not in a hurry. Anyway, it would be his sooner or later, so there was no need to show his eagerness, which would make him look inferior. If my mother is a concubine who is not favored, you will be a son of a concubine. Even if we have children in the future, our status will be much lower. Zhao Shiran's tears fell again. He said straightforwardly, but there were only the two of them in the room, so he was not afraid to be more straightforward. This status is indeed not good. Xiao Huan gritted his teeth and said, "My sister is still in the Imperial Palace. There are still things in the future. If she loses the position of legal wife, it will be hard to say." Although he was facing his wife, Xiao Huan still said something. He, his father, and his grandmother knew something about Xiao Yanru, but others didn't know. When everything was uncertain, no one could predict the future. At this time, the more he said, the more mistakes he would make, and it would be easier for his family to be killed. It was best to be cautious. It was easier for him to put his thoughts on his sister. Then what should we do? I heard that the Empress Dowager wants my father to marry another noble girl. If he really marries another noble girl and gives birth to a child, husband, what should we do? Zhao Shiran shivered and thought of a worse future. The child of a noble girl, and the youngest son was favored, would have nothing to do with Xiao Huan. My father will not marry her. Xiao Yan shook his head affirmatively and said, if he marries her, even if he gives birth to a child, the child will be younger than Hao. It will be more disadvantageous for my father. Although it is disadvantageous, it is not impossible. Zhao Shiran had another attitude. Of course, they were talking about the title of nobility. Xiao Yuanhao was young, so it was quite suitable for Xiao Hua and to inherit the title of nobility. But what if Xiao Huayan gave birth to a younger legitimate son? Husband, I will forgive my mother and be filial to her. My mother is just weak, and she is a little mentally abnormal in the Yuhui nunnery. She thinks too much. She doesn't really want to hit me. Zhao Shiran reached out and shook Xiao Huayan's sleeve and said, you are really willing to take the responsibility? Xiao Huayan hesitated. For you, I can take the responsibility. Zhao Shiran lowered her head, and tears fell down again, which made Xiao Huayan feel distressed again. He did take a fancy to Zhao Shiran, otherwise he would not have delayed the marriage until now. Now, seeing her aggrieved and sad but having no choice but to endure it, how could he feel good in his heart? He reached out and patted her back. Don't worry, I will not let you down. When the time comes, everything will be yours. Mother's health is not good, just take care of her. Of course, what he meant was that Madame of Duke Xing's mansion could not order Zhao Shiran to do anything in the future. In the future, if the title of nobility of Marquis Xing's mansion was passed to Xiao Hua, Zhao Shiran would be the master of the inner court, and Madame of Duke Xing's mansion could only stand aside. I don't care as long as you are well, Zhao Shiran said softly with tears again. But the Empress Dowager's decree. Xiao Hua then was full of worries. The current situation was too tricky. Even if he didn't marry his father for the time being, it would not be easy for his mother to become a wife. You can't become the principal wife, but you can be a secondary wife. At least you can be a wife, and you can become the legitimate son. Zhao Shiran suggested. What happened to Madame of Duke Xing's mansion was not a big deal. The most important thing was that Xiao Huayan's identity was distorted because of Zhang's mansion's affairs, which was the most annoying thing. Father dare not disobey the Empress Dowager's decree. Xiao Huayan frowned and shook his head. If there is a great contribution, is it possible? Zhao Shiran suddenly asked. Xiao Huayan nodded at first, and then shook his head with a wry smile. If there is a great contribution, it will be my mother. This is really difficult. A great contribution could alarm the Empress Dowager or the Empress. Of course, it could also be the Emperor. It was really difficult to do. How great a contribution would it take to turn the tables? Thinking of Xiao Yanru, Xiao Huayan said hesitantly, maybe we can wait a little longer. If Xiao Yanru gained power in a few years, the Zhang's mansion could still turn the tables. Of course, the premise was that his father hadn't married yet. Xiao Huayan was very sure that his father wouldn't marry, but now he felt uncertain. If his father really wanted to marry, it would be bad. A few years later, the crown prince could be appointed, and his sister could win the crown prince's favor and help him? Actually, he was not sure about all these. The room became quiet. The couple hugged each other, but each had his own thoughts. First young master, first grandma, Prince Chen's mansion has sent someone here. A little maid reported outside the room. Xiao Huayan woke up the two people hugging inside. He stood up, lifted his robe, and sat in a spacious chair on one side. Zhao Shiran leaned back and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. After calming down, she nodded to Xiao Huayan. Come in. Xiao Huayan said lightly. The door curtain was lifted, and Nanny Yu came in with a few servant girls. A few of Zhao Shiran's trusted servant girls also came in and stood by the bed. Just now, when the husband and wife were talking, they had chased the servant girls out. Greetings, first young master, first grandma. Nanny Yu stepped forward and bowed to them. Xiao Huayan waved his hand, stood up, and said to Zhao Shiran, I have something to talk to my father about, so I'll leave first. Take care, husband. Zhao Shiran nodded. This was an internal affair, so Xiao Huayan didn't need to stay. After Xiao Huayan left, Nanny Yu asked the maids behind her to come up, and each tray was filled with some nourishing herbs. "First Grandma, our princess is not in good health, so she won't be coming. She specially asked me to bring you some nourishing herbs so that you can take good care of yourself," Nanny Yu said. "Many thanks to your Wangfei. Is your Wangfei well? I should be the one to visit her, but in my current condition." Zhao Xiran's eyes turned red again, and her voice was a little choked with sobs. Nanny Yu hurriedly said, "First Grandma is not in good health, and our princess also knows that. First Grandma, you should take good care of yourself. You don't have to worry about other things." "Thank you, your princess," Zhao Xiran said, moved. Suddenly, the corner of her eyes drifted to the tray in the hands of the last maid, and she was stunned. Chapter 10:16. The tray of the last servant girl did not contain medicinal materials, but a few pieces of clothes on it. They were very gorgeous clothes with bright and dazzling colors. However, upon a closer look, they were not the best brocade, which did not match Xiao Wanru's current status as Princess Qin. In fact, the principal servant girls of Marquis Xing's mansion would use some of this kind of satin, but the color was not so bright. This. Zhao Xiran was very surprised. "Your princess is?" "Our princess said that now that concubine Jiang has become a concubine, her life in Marquis Xing's mansion will probably be more difficult in the future. These clothes are our princess's old clothes when she returned to Marquis Xing's mansion. Now we return them to concubine Jiang, which will help her solve her current difficulties," Nanny Yu said with a smile. The last servant girl stepped forward and brought the tray to Zhao Xiran. These clothes were bought by Marquis Xing's mansion for Xiao Wanru, which meant that Madame Jiang had chosen some mediocre satin at that time. At this time, Xiao Wanru sent them back. Although it was a little mean, Madame Jiang was even more mean at that time. She used some of the material worn by principal servant girls for Princess Qin to wear. This was to bully Princess Qin, who was not married at that time. Even if she suffered a loss secretly, she could not say anything. After all, although the material of these clothes was not very good, the color was still decent, which was different from the color that the servant girls usually wore. This. Zhao Xiran became embarrassed. No matter how concubine Jiang was not, she was still her mother-in-law on the surface. "First Grandma, our princess also asked me to pass a few words to her," Nanny Yu said again. "What words?" Zhao Xiran asked. Nanny Yu coughed twice in a low voice, cleared her throat, and then said, "First sister-in-law, I believe you know what kind of person concubine Jiang used to be without me telling you, right? It's okay for me to send a few sets of old clothes at most. As for other people, they might even think about her life. At this time, if she dies, I believe many people will be happy." After Nanny Yu finished speaking, she hurriedly bowed and said, "Great-grandmother, I have overstepped my boundaries." Zhao Xiran's face changed dramatically, and he suddenly stood up straight. There was a trace of panic in his eyes. Ignoring Nanny Yu and the others, he turned around and hurriedly winked at a trusted old maid beside him. "Send the clothes of Prince Qin to concubine Jiang and see if she needs anything else. If she needs anything, tell me directly. Let concubine Jiang take care of herself." She suddenly thought that if someone wanted Jiang Yinyang's life at this time, this matter would be pushed onto her head. On the one hand, Xiao Wanru was responsible for concubine Jiang's death, and on the other hand, it was because concubine Jiang was beaten and had lost her child. If concubine Jiang died at this time, Xiao Wanru and she would take the blame. It was she and Xiao Wanru who forced concubine Jiang to die. Xiao Wanru was Prince Chen's wife and had a noble status. Concubine Jiang had always been unkind to her, and she was not a direct elder. Besides, she had Prince Chen's mansion and great elder princess to support her, and even the Empress Dowager. Even if her reputation was slightly tarnished, so what? She was different. She married into Marquis Xing's mansion. She had no status and was concubine Jiang's biological daughter-in-law. She couldn't bear the accusation of forcing her biological mother-in-law to die. Thinking more deeply, if concubine Jiang died at this time, it would be more difficult to change Xiao Hua's identity as a son of a concubine. Zhao Xiran had thought of this before. She just thought that concubine Jiang would be fine. Now the clothes sent by Xiao Wanru made her realize that concubine Jiang had offended a lot of people, not only Xiao Wanru but also the third branch. Although the third madam was sick and weak, Zhao Shiran had offended a lot of people. Although the third madam was sick and weak, she was not so easy to be trifled with. Even the Marquis? When such a thought popped up in his mind, Zhao Shiran was so frightened that cold sweat broke out on his back. He hurriedly sent away his trusted servant. His purpose was, of course, to arrange for concubine Jiang's safety. At this time, concubine Jiang could not die, absolutely could not die. She must live. After her trusted old maid understood and left, Zhao Shiran breathed a sigh of relief, but the smile on her face was very forced. "Thank you, Princess Jin. I will go back and thank you to your Princess Jin." "Nanny," you said with a smile, "First Grandma, as long as you don't think our princess is meddlesome." "How could I? If it weren't for your princess?" Zhao Shiran stopped for a moment. She had completely understood Xiao Wanru's behavior. Of course, Xiao Wanru didn't deliberately send some old clothes to be mean to concubine Jiang. The most important thing was to remind her that in this regard, her interests were the same as hers. At this time, nothing could happen to concubine Jiang. Princess Chen had a noble status. Although she was not afraid of others talking about her, it was better not to let this kind of thing happen. They were all smart people, and some things didn't need to be so clear. "Thank you, Princess Chen. When I recover, I will definitely go to see Princess Chen and thank you in person." Zhao Shiran said. "First Grandma, you are welcome. But Princess Chen wants to ask you how to solve the matter of the Ministry of Justice?" Nanny Yu's first task was completed. She smiled slightly and turned to the second question that Xiao Wanru asked her to answer. "How about the Ministry of Justice?" Zhao Shiran opened her mouth and didn't know how to start. Just now, she and Xiao Hua and also talked about this matter. In fact, it was better to turn a big matter into a small one. It would be best if Princess Chen didn't pursue it. Now it seemed that Princess Chen didn't intend to pursue it. "This matter, I can't make the decision. Princess Chen, please turn to old madam." Zhao Shiran pushed the matter away and didn't want to take over it. "If you turn to old madam, I am afraid it will be disadvantageous to First Grandma." Nanny Yu said calmly. "Why do you say so?" Zhao Shiran's face darkened and she asked. "Old madam must be angry when such a thing happened. When she was in the palace, old madam passed out because of anger. Now although she has returned to the mansion, I am afraid that she is unwilling to mention this matter again or bear the responsibility for it. She will definitely push the blame to First Grandma. If First Grandma doesn't solve it, old madam will definitely vent her anger on First Grandma." She meant that no matter whether she said it now or through old madam, this matter should fall on Zhao Shiran. If Zhao Shiran didn't agree now, when old madam appeared, she would vent her anger on her. The third madam had always been unwilling to deal with the affairs of the second branch and had a bad relationship with concubine Jiang. Old madam couldn't say that it was reasonable for the third madam to solve this matter. Therefore, this matter must fall on Zhao Shiran in the end, and she was in a bad position. Zhao Shiran gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, I will ask clearly and give your princess an answer as soon as possible." She had to agree. As Xiao Wanru said, she would not be able to avoid her no matter how hard she tried. It was better to agree now. Maybe there was still a chance to turn things around. At least, she could not let the whole Marquis Xing's mansion or her and her husband be involved in the matter of concubine Jiang. "Then I'll have to trouble you, First Grandma. If First Grandma has a plan, please send someone to tell me as soon as possible. Otherwise, the Ministry of Justice may directly announce that concubine Jiang's title of honorary lady is gone, right?" Nanny Yu thanked her with a smile and then asked another question. Zhao Shiran's eyes lit up. "I don't know about this. We will discuss it with Marquis and make a decision," Zhao Shiran said, but didn't answer Nanny Yu's question. "Okay, then I will go back and report to our princess first." Nanny Yu said indifferently. "Okay, come on. Send Nanny Yu off for me." Zhao Shiran said. "First Grandma, you are too polite. I will go first." After bowing, Nanny Yu left with several servant girls of Prince Qin, and a principal servant girl of Zhao Shiran saw her off. In the room, Zhao Shiran's eyes flickered a few times under the light. Honorary lady? In a hurry, there was no time to revoke Madame Jiang's title of honorary lady. In other words, Madame Jiang was still a concubine with the title of honorary lady. Just for this point, it was very profitable. Come on, invite the first young master here. After calming down, Zhao Shiran gave an order. She couldn't make the decision alone, so it was up to Xiao Hua and to make the decision. When Nanny Yu returned to Prince Chen's mansion and reported to Xiao Wanru was pasting a painting under the lamp. It was a painting made of maple leaves. It was a painting of a lady in the autumn forest. The maple leaves of different shades not only decorated the maple leaves under the setting sun, but also decorated the lady's fluttering skirt and belt. Only the key parts were slightly drawn with lines, and the rest were trimmed into different shapes with maple leaves and decorated. Of course, she had to draw another painting in advance, and then she could paste the maple leaf painting in front of her according to that painting. At present, there was not much work to do. Because she had practiced before, Xiao Wanru was quite familiar with the technique. It was something that she had prepared long ago. She planned to use this painting for the Empress Dowager's birthday, so she pasted it very carefully. After listening to Nanny Yu's report, Xiao Wanru took 2 steps back and looked at her unfinished painting. Then she put down the untrimmed maple leaves in her hand, washed her hands in the clear water beside her, and gently wiped her hands with a white handkerchief. She asked softly, "How was First Grandma when you left?" First Grandma should have realized what I meant, so she didn't answer my question. "Your Highness, I just don't understand. What does it matter to concubine Jiang whether the title of honorary lady exists or not?" Although Nanny Yu said it according to Xiao Wanru's words, she actually didn't understand what it meant. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and sat down in a chair. She took the teacup handed by Chu Lu, wiped the foam with the lid, and put it down. Since she has the title of honorary lady, she doesn't have to go to the court. Even if she doesn't have to go, can concubine Jiang overturn the case? Nanny Yu became more and more confused. She used to live in Jiangzhou, so she was not familiar with some things about the madams of aristocratic families with the title of honorary lady. At that time, she could only see a few madams with the title of honorary lady, and no one would come to tell her in detail about it, so she seemed particularly confused. Madams with the title of honorary lady have privileges, and the Jiang family can make a fuss about it. Moreover, there is actually a key point in the matter of the Jiang family. This key point has not been noticed before, because some people think that the interests of the Jiang family are the same, but in fact, the interests of Marquis Xing's mansion are not completely the same. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully, and her eyes became slightly gloomy. Only when there was profit to be made could Marquis Xing's mansion become more lively. Chapter 10:17. Xiao Wanru had a hunch that Marquis Xing's mansion would dig out more things this time. As for Wang Xingxue of the Ministry of Justice, she didn't care whether he was alive or dead. In fact, people like Wang Xingxue could have died long ago. In vain, she had sympathized with him in her last life. Even if her reputation was ruined because of him, she felt that it was not his fault. Thinking of it now, it was ridiculous. Such a scheming and ambitious person had been secretly working for the Jiang's family and dragged her into the swamp of blood and mud again and again. How could he be innocent? For Marquis Xing's mansion, this sharp knife could be broken. So what if she has a title? Similar questions were asked in Marquis Xing's mansion. There was no one else in the room, only the young couple talking under the lamp. But there was no sweet talk at all. One leaned against the bed, and the other sat in the chair, both frowning slightly. Zhao Shiran exhaled hard and said, "Just now Princess Chen sent something over and said mean words. I know that concubine Jiang and Princess Chen don't get along, so I didn't care about it. But then I thought that concubine Jiang has offended a lot of people in the past. Now she is losing power and I'm afraid that something bad will happen, so I hurriedly sent my old maids to her." Zhao Shiran told him the whole story, which made Xiao Hua and frown more tightly. It seemed that she was saying that concubine Chen was mean, but the point was not Zhao Shiran. Suddenly, he thought of something and his eyebrows twitched fiercely. I don't think anyone in the mansion will hurt concubine Jiang, but I'm still worried. Zhao Shiran said tentatively in a soft voice. Xiao Huayan interrupted her and said, "You did the right thing. Concubine Jiang has indeed offended a lot of people in the past, so it's better to have someone take care of her. One old maid is not enough, so we have to prepare a few more. Although she is now a concubine, she is my biological mother. She was not in good health before, so we should have someone take good care of her and not let the servants humiliate her." Zhao Shiran raised his head and looked at Xiao Huan in surprise. This was completely different from the indifferent and even angry look that Xiao Huan had shown before. In this mansion, only third aunt and concubine Jiang don't get along well. It's possible for them to embezzle some money, but I'm afraid that they won't directly deal with concubine Jiang. Zhao Shiran pinched the handkerchief and asked tentatively. Xiao Huan said in a low voice. After a long while, he stood up and walked to the window to take a look. Then, he reached out and pulled the curtain down. Then, he turned back to the bed and sat down beside Zhao Shiran. He reached out and pulled Zhao Shiran into his arms. "Father, there's someone outside." Ah! Zhao Shiran was stunned. She really didn't know about this. Xiao Jing looked very kind and didn't seem to be the kind of person who would do such a thing. Are you mistaken? There's no mistake. It's concubine Jiang who said that. Concubine Jiang is raising a woman outside. If father is tempted at this time, concubine Jiang is indeed in danger. Xiao Huan said, his face filled with embarrassment. This kind of thing was the most difficult to deal with as a son. It happened so suddenly that he didn't expect it, but Zhao Shiran's words reminded him. At the moment, his father's interests might not be on his side. He was sure that Xiao Jing wouldn't marry another noble lady because he was looking at their common interests. But now, he wasn't so sure. Since it's an outsider, her status shouldn't be high. Father won't directly marry her. Shall we marry her? Zhao Shiran asked. Who knows? Maybe he has already brought her in. According to mother, it's been a long time. Xiao Huan said impatiently. This kind of thing wasn't something he should worry about, but at such a critical moment he had to worry about it. Thinking about it, he became more and more annoyed with Madame Jiang. How could it become like this? Even the Empress Dowager was alerted. No, don't worry about it. Zhao Shiran suppressed the raging waves in her heart. Did you forget what I said just now? Concubine Jiang has an honorary title. I don't know whether the Empress Dowager or the Empress has forgotten about it. The Empress was in charge of the noble lady's honorary titles, but if the Empress Dowager wanted to, it was also possible. Madame Jiang didn't know who made the mistake, but she was the fish that escaped the net. Concubine Jiang is now a concubine, and she has an honorary title. From this point alone, if father wants to marry another woman, that woman must have a high status. Otherwise, how could she suppress a concubine with an honorary title? Zhao Shiran analyzed. But now, it's just that the palace has forgotten about it. Who knows when the palace will issue another decree and directly erase concubine Jiang's honorary title. Xiao Huan was very annoyed. Zhao Shiran shook his head with certainty. What do you mean? Xiao Huan didn't understand. Not twice for the same thing. There are rules in the palace. Zhao Shiran thought for a while and explained. The so-called not twice for the same thing meant that since Madame Jiang had already lost her position as the legal wife because of her mistake, it was unreasonable to punish her for the same thing. If Madame Jiang had directly issued a decree to remove her from the legal wife position, it would have been fine. But now that Madame Jiang had been punished, it would be against the rules to punish her again. Xiao Huan didn't really understand the rules of the Ministry of Rights, but he was too concerned and couldn't remember it at the moment. Hearing Zhao Shiran's words, his eyes immediately lit up and he nodded repeatedly. Yes, concubine Jiang still has the honorary title. No matter who wants to marry into the family, it's not so easy. Not only that, there is also the matter of the Ministry of Penalty. Since concubine Jiang still has the honorary title, she doesn't have to go to court. Husband, Send someone to the Ministry of Penalty to explain this matter. Now concubine Jiang is still injured, mentally unstable, and fainted from time to time. It's really inconvenient for her to go to court, and it's also inconvenient for her to go because of her status. Zhao Shiran reminded him. In the mansion, the legal wife and the concubine were clearly divided according to the family rules, but outside the mansion, the legal wife and the concubine were completely different. Xiaohua and nodded repeatedly. It was indeed the legal wife, but after thinking for a while, he had new doubts. The matter of the Ministry of Penalty has to be dealt with, right? Wang Shengxue, the libertine, is still in prison. Qiu Yu also made such a scene just for this case. Thinking of this, he felt very annoyed and had no other thoughts. He stood up and paced around twice, only feeling a headache. His mother was really useless. She even used Wang Shengxue, the libertine, who could not accomplish anything, but was good at spoiling things. Husband, for whom do you think Wang Shengxue framed child Yen this time? Zhao Shiran looked much calmer, leaning against the bed and asking. She was also in charge of the house in Marquis Xing's mansion, so she naturally knew child Yen, who lived in the outer courtyard. Is it concubine Jiang again? Xiaohua said angrily. Yes, no matter what. Wang Shengxue did it for someone this time, but it can't be for concubine Jiang. During this time, she was in the Yuhui nunnery, so it was impossible for her to order Wang Shengxue to do anything, let alone to frame child Yen, who had nothing to do with her. Zhao Shiran shook her head and said, who else in the mansion can order Wang Shengxue? At the end of the sentence, Zhao Shiran's voice suddenly stopped. She looked at Xiaohua in horror, and Xiaohua also looked at her in horror. When the two of them looked at each other, they immediately had an answer. Zhao Shiran took a deep breath and looked gloomy. She could not be the wife of a concubine's son, and the child she gave birth to could not be a concubine's son. Father! Xiaohua also took a deep breath, and then his face changed greatly. Both of them were smart people, and they immediately thought of the only answer. Father, why did you do this? Xiaohua murmured. Yen, she was a gentle and talented person. During the period when he lived in the mansion, Xiaohua would visit him occasionally. He felt that Yen, she should be able to pass the Imperial examination, so he was very friendly with him. However, he was afraid that he would delay his Imperial examination, so he was not very close to him. Don't worry about why father did this. At present, all the key is Wang Shengxue, whether father or mother, if this person. Zhao Shiran's voice became lower and lower, and she even deliberately paused here. Although she did not say it clearly, her meaning was very clear. Wang Shengxue should die. Xiaohua's eyes lit up. As for the matter of the Ministry of Justice, concubine Jiang refuses to go to the honorary title, and Wang Shengxue is locked up in prison. If anything happens, it has nothing to do with concubine Jiang. As for the other people, that pair of unbearable sisters can actually be bribed. Zhao Shiran said. Xiaohua understood and happily sat in front of the bed again. He held Zhao Shiran in his arms and patted her gently. Shiran, you are really my lucky star. In this way, everything will be solved. When I'm a little better, I'll ask old madam to take me into the palace and meet the Empress Dowager directly. I'll say that what happened yesterday was my own carelessness, not my mother-in-law's fault. Zhao Shiran gritted his teeth and increased his bargaining chip. As a concubine, although it was very satisfying for her, she could not be impatient and spoil the big plan. If Madame Zhang's status fell, Xiaohua could only be a son of a concubine. And it sounded that her father-in-law was not a sincere person. She could not let him take advantage of the loophole and make any more trouble. Even if Madame Jiang died, she had to die in the position of legal wife. Shiran, it's my great fortune to marry you. Xiaohua naturally understood what Zhao Shiran meant. Thinking of how she had been willing to compromise for his sake, and how she had taken on all the responsibilities without waiting for him to ask, how could he not be touched? He hugged Zhao Shiran tightly, and a trace of sadness flashed across his eyes. In this way, the suspicion on his mother would be almost cleared. The Empress Dowager punished his mother for 2 reasons. One was that she plotted against Prince Qin, and the other was that she caused Zhao Shiran to have a miscarriage. At present, if these two things were not serious, and his mother still had the honorary title, it was not impossible for her to return to the position of legal wife. Even if she was not the legal wife, she could also be a co-wife. If he responded to Zhao Shiran's words and called Madame Jiang concubine Jiang, he could make Zhao Shiran take the initiative to let him go. As for how to deal with Wang Xingxue in the Ministry of Justice, there were actually quite a lot of ways. Chapter 10:18. Wang Xingxue is dead? When Xiao Wanru got the news, she looked very calm. She put down a maple leaf in her hand and looked at the incomplete pattern calmly. This was the news that she had expected. When she sent the old clothes to Marquis Xing's mansion and reminded Zhao Shiran, she had already expected it. There were rings within rings. Of course, there were more than just a few of them. Of course, she was not just mean on the surface when she sent the old clothes back. If Zhao Shiran was not a scheming person, he would not have thought so much and extended so much. As for Xiao Huan, although the current matter seemed to have little to do with Xiao Hua, and things would not have gone so smoothly without Xiao Huan. Wang Xingxue had been working for Madame Jiang of Marquis Xing and Xiao Jing of Marquis Xing in his two lives. As a sharp knife in their hands and a qualified hatchet man, he was finally destroyed in his own hands in this life. She was naturally a little excited, but it was just a little. Everything was in her hands, and Wang Xingxue's fate was also fixed. How did he die? It was said that he was poisoned to death. It was a jailer who sent a meal from Wang's mansion and paid money to send it in. Unexpectedly, Wang Xingxue died as soon as he ate it. When they went to find that person, he had already disappeared. Qing reported. Of course, it was not easy to find a person with no background in the capital city. Even this person might have left the city and never come back. Of course, there was another possibility that this person was dead. Even if they found him, it would be useless. This clue was broken. Wang Xingxue probably did not expect that he would die in the hands of someone from Marquis Xing's mansion until he died. What did the people outside say? Xiao Wanru asked lightly and narrowed her watery eyes with a distant look. The people outside all insinuated that this matter had something to do with Marquis Xing. It was obvious that the means used to kill Child Yen were not the means of the mansion. Wang Xingxue and Child Yen had no grudges in the past, so if Child Yen had offended someone, it was most likely to be Marquis Xing. However, there is no evidence now. Qing'er said. Today, she specially went out to inquire about this information. Princess, if you want to find out, I will take someone to investigate. Xiao Wanru waved her hand to stop her and said, "There's no need. After such a thing happened, the Ministry of Justice will definitely send out a lot of people. Wouldn't it be a slap in the face of the Ministry of Justice if they killed someone in the cell of the Ministry of Justice? At this time, don't do anything and just ask about the rumors outside." At this time, if anyone made any strange movements, it would certainly arouse the suspicion of many people. Even the emperor would be alarmed and secretly send people to investigate this matter. At this time, whoever made a move was the most likely one. At a time like this, he couldn't act rashly. In fact, that cell was only a temporary cell. Because Wang Xingxue had not been tried in public, he had been temporarily detained and had not been convicted. In addition, everyone thought that his case was not a big deal, so the Ministry of Justice did not take it seriously. That was why someone took advantage of the loophole and dealt with Wang Xingxue. It had to be said that the lady of honorary title of the Jiang family had played a role in delaying them. She had delayed them until the preparations were complete and they had directly taken action. The current situation of the Jiang family was enough to make people not suspect her. This was a good time. Yes, I know. Qing nodded. In the past few days, accept Grandma and how, no matter who comes, refuse them. Just tell them that I am recuperating and it is inconvenient for me to see others. Xiao Wanru ordered. Your Highness, what if they come from the palace? Yu Jie reminded her worriedly. She could refuse the guests at the front door. Anyway, the princess seldom received guests. No one from the palace will come. These days, imperial physicians have been coming in and out, which means that I am in poor health. Even if the Empress Dowager finds out the truth, she will not specially send anyone to me. At most, she will send some medicinal materials to nourish my body. Xiao Wenru said. In fact, not only the Empress Dowager, but also all the people in the palace, including the Empress Dowager, the Empress, and even Zhao Yidi, who had only met her once, had also sent medicinal materials to her. If the palace sends more medicinal materials, you can take them, Xiao Wenru said. Everything showed that she, the imperial consort of Qin, couldn't even take care of herself. Except for that day when she was angry and returned the old clothes to Jiangshi, she didn't do anything else. It was easy to investigate the matter of sending people to be mean to the Jiang family, but because of the cause and effect, what he did was not excessive. Moreover, he was young, so it made sense that he used such a mean way to vent his anger. As for what would happen next, his body would not be able to take it, so how could he do anything else? Yes, we understand. Qing and Yu Jie looked at each other, immediately smiled knowingly, and then bowed respectfully. Your Highness, I have to report these things to Master. Raised her head and said seriously. When Master left, he told her that if something happened, she must send a message to him. Write it. Xiao Wenru nodded with a smile. I happen to have a letter. Take it to him. Yes, I understand. Qing said with a smile. The princess missed Master, which was a good thing. Master must be very happy. They, who had followed Prince Qin, were the ones who really knew how cold-blooded Prince Qin was. Only this Princess Qin could make Prince Qin warm up. It was not the kind of warm smile on his face, but the kind of warmth that made people feel from the bottom of their hearts. Wang Xingxue is dead? Xiao Jing put down the book in his hand heavily and asked in astonishment. Yes, the Ministry of Justice is already investigating at this time. What should we do now, Master Marquis? The guards said. In fact, they had secretly contacted Wang Xingxue and asked him what to say about it. Now he suddenly died and he was poisoned to death. What did they say outside? Xiao Jing gritted his teeth and put his hand on his forehead. Recently, things happened one after another, and he also had a headache. It is said that it must have something to do with our Marquis's mansion or Master Marquis. It is most likely that Master Marquis. The guard lowered his head and told him the rumors outside in full detail. The more Xiao Jing listened, the worse his face became. In the end, he suddenly stood up and pushed all the files on the table to the ground. The guard was so scared that he hurriedly stopped talking, took a few steps back, and lowered his head, not daring to say anything. There was only Xiao Jing's heavy breathing in the room. After a long while, Xiao Jing asked, "How is the Ministry of Justice's investigation going?" "I heard that they are still investigating. The person who delivered the vegetables used to be a servant of the prince's mansion, but in fact, there is no such person in the prince's mansion." The guard became more and more respectful. "They are all good-for-nothings," Xiao Jing said sternly and sat down slowly again. At this time, his mind was also in a mess. Originally, he planned to blame everything on Madame Jiang and let Wang Xingxue identify Madame Jiang. At most, Madame Jiang would be executed. Unexpectedly, someone secretly poisoned Wang Xingxue one step ahead of him. Not only did they poison Wang Xingxue in the cell of the Ministry of Justice, but they also led all the suspicion to him. "Marquis, what should we do now?" The guard waited for a while and did not hear Xiao Jing's voice, so he asked cautiously. "Leave first. Don't act rashly at this time. No matter what others say, this matter has nothing to do with me." Xiao Jing gritted his teeth. If he found out who was behind him, he would skin him alive. At this time, he could not do anything that would arouse suspicion, nor could he ask anyone for help. He could not even go out of the prince's mansion. What he had to do now was to be cautious, more cautious. The guard quietly retreated. At this time, he could not arouse suspicion or be discovered. Moreover, he had to feel that everything he did had nothing to do with Wang Xingxue and that he could not care about Wang Xingxue. Such a thing was still a little difficult. But with Madame Jiang's help, it was reasonable. Suddenly, he thought that this matter would not benefit him, but Madame Jiang would benefit, and it was Madame Jiang who delayed it. Could it be that this matter had something to do with Madame Jiang? Come and see concubine Jiang. Xiao Jing stood up and said. Since Madame Jiang was demoted, he had not seen this concubine Jiang in front of him. Madame Jiang's life was much better than before. Zhao Xiran sent 4 old maids at once, and they all served her wholeheartedly. For a while, she had a good impression of Zhao Xiran. As for the handkerchief that Zhao Xiran asked the maid to send to her that day, the old maids also explained it clearly. They said that they were afraid that Princess Chen would vent her anger on her, so they sent the handkerchief to her. However, they did not expect that Princess Chen was so cunning and used this matter as a trigger. After this matter was cleared up, Jiang Shi could be considered to have let go of the previous enmity with Zhao Xiran. The reason why she was so furious that day was because she found that the handkerchief with the smell of medicine in her hand was not hers. Later, after Zhao Xiran came, he asked someone to replace the original dirty one and give it to her. After finding out that there was a smell on the handkerchief, Madame Jiang immediately felt that Zhao Xiran had framed her, so she slapped Zhao Xiran. Thinking of it now, Madame Jiang felt guilty and distressed. After all, Zhao Xiran was her biological grandson. She asked someone to send a message to Zhao Xiran to show that she did not mean to slap him. Of course, her attitude was still very high. After all, she was the mother-in-law. Seeing Xiao Jing coming over, Madame Jiang rolled her eyes and sneered. She asked several old maids in the room to leave. She did have something to say to Xiao Jing. Now that Xiao Jing was here, it was a good time. After resting for a few days, Madame Jiang looked much better, but her eyes fell on Xiao Jing's round face with an uncontrollable coldness. The situation of the husband and wife was very different now. One was so thin that his bones could be seen, and the other was so round that they looked like they were blessed. Master Marquis, are you happy to see me like this now? Are you willing for me to give up the position of Madame Marquis Xing? After so many years, you have finally done what you want. There were no outsiders in the room, so Madame Jiang did not hold back anymore. She sneered at him with resentment in her eyes. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.